I was very angry the first time that Trump was elected. I saw what was going to happen. I looked at it from a moral and his characteristics didn't align with my values. I just want my neighbors to succeed. I just want them to be happy, and I don't care what makes them happy as long as it's making them happy and we can all get somewhere together. There are nuances. There are ways that we can probably see each other, and it's when you're sitting down having these conversations that you actually like, okay. It's the rhetoric and it's the words us and them and those people that really becomes an issue. Words matter. But there are certain hard lines that, like right now, what's happening now is not okay. It's not. And I don't think it's hyperbole to sit and say this is probably the end of democracy as we know it until we, as a group, together, right and left, say, you know what, let's find our humanity, and this is not where we need to be. And are you going to change people's minds all the time? No. But again, they're a product of their own environment and their own house and their own learning. And so if you don't do the work to unlearn, that's key. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps when they're taking the sole of your shoe. It just can't happen. So personally, we have to get over this divisions that are being sowed between us and look maybe, oh, why? We tend to just demonize the poor, and it's their fault that they are where they are, and they didn't hustle enough, and they didn't work hard enough, and they didn't have the 7 jobs and work themselves to the bone and work 80 hours. And if you're not working those, you're not good enough. And I don't think that that's fair.
I hate the fact that people are voting the lesser of two evils. I hate that.
I do too.
How often do you hear that?
A lot.
How do we fix that?
I don't know if you do. If you only have a 2-party system, you have to allow other voices and other people at the table.
You talked a little bit about intention, and it's very hard to not assume negative intent. It's like the hardest thing to do.
It's so hard.
And one of the things you said was that you don't think Donald Trump, President Trump, is an evil man.
There has to be a level of decorum that we've lost, I'd say, in this last 10 years of dealing with this. I miss who I was before Trump.
Is there anything right now that the Trump administration is doing that you like?
That I like right now. I want to thank you for not making this a gotcha moment. We've had a couple of moments, but also we can work through that and have a conversation instead of immediately going, well, you are the worst person in the history of the world. And I have to thank you for that, because that doesn't happen online, and it doesn't happen often with other folks to be like, okay, this is actually, let's talk about it. And we found a lot of common ground as well, and things that we can agree on. I'm not going to lie. I've been a little intimidated about this.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have.
Well, good. Hopefully I can make it not that way.
I've been a little nervous, a little bit not sure where we were going to go, because, we don't sit on opposite ends of things from me listening to your podcast. I don't think that we sit opposite, but I think this is a good chance for us to sit, talk, and rehash things or hash things and realize that we're both humans who love Lewis County and and the folks that we live with.
Right. What a refreshing take.
Yeah.
Especially in today's climate.
100%.
But I'm really excited to meet you and to have you here, and thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here, honestly.
Hopefully as it goes, it's not intimidating at all. That's not my...
I don't know if it's intimidating. I've been nervous. We talked about it as a group about whether it was a good step and whether it was a healthy thing to try and make sure that we got our sides of things. Not sides. That sounds so combative.
Tribal.
And I don't like that.
Yeah.
But just in a way to make sure that we're coming at it with human and from what I can tell, you're very balanced.
Okay, good. That's the idea.
Yeah. And I love that you lead with your faith. I'm, and I am in awe of that. So I think we have a lot to learn from each other in that sense. And cool. I don't know. And I think the group did too. And they thought, this is a perfect idea to really dispel some myths and some ideas that we might have gathered in our head from social media or the keyboard warrior type of atmosphere. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel the same exact way. I think that the more that you could have conversations in good faith with people that you don't agree with, that's how you can get the metrics for a healthy society.
100%.
And so, interestingly, that's just so far away from where we're getting, it feels like.
It feels like that, but at the same time, it's not. I think when
Right.
we have these little micro conversations, I think when we sit down with neighbors, I think on the grand scheme, we see these headlines and it looks really big and scary, and it's meant to.
Yeah.
But when we're sitting down and we see our friend in trouble, or if you were on the side of the road with a tire needing to be changed,
Right.
someone's going to stop, and you're not going to ask them, well, are you Republican or Democrats? You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen that way.
Right.
I really do think that the more that we can sit and have conversations instead of type on our keyboard, we're a lot better off as a
Unplug.
group.
Go talk to people. Online rage, online narrative building, stories, whatever you want to call it, the media is just so far removed from this kind of conversation and the everyday interaction. And I think the more that we can promote that, the better.
Mm-hmm. I do want to put in a disclaimer that I speak for myself and not the entire Democratic committee when we speak. We all are a big umbrella. We have everyone from retired teachers to current teachers to union folks. For the gamut from one of our youngest members ran for one of the local races, and she's in her 20s. Okay. So we have a large gamut, and some of us have big feelings on different things, and some of us don't feel as much about others. And I'm speaking for them, but not for them, if that makes sense. Yeah. And certainly not for my job. So I just want to put that out there.
Good disclaimer.
Not that I don't think that that's going to become an issue, but it's needs to be said just in case.
Cool. I think before we even get into some of some ideas and kind of where we might differ, where we might agree, I want to get just kind of a baseline for who you are and what you're kind of all about. So can you do that?
So I was born and raised in Lewis County. Went to school at Lavelle Academy.
Brownie point number 2.
My parents, my mom is from Beaver River. My dad is from Loudville. So, and his parents were here. And my grandparents, I grew up next door to my great-grandmother. So, I know what it's like to be here, and I've always loved the area. In college, I left and went to South Carolina. I thought I was going to be a marine biologist, and I was going to work with Shamu. 100% certain that's what was going to happen. Okay. And then I became a Spanish teacher instead. I went and took Spanish classes and just loved it. Fell in love with the language, the people, the culture. Taught for about 10 years I lied to you, 5 years down south, between North and South Carolina. Loved it. That my husband in college wanted to stay down and experience life in a different area, because if you think it's interesting now, go down south. It's a whole other ballgame.
Yep, it's a totally different world.
And then I had the opportunity that when one of the Spanish teachers at Lavelle Academy was retiring, he said to me, "Hey, do you want to come up and take my job?" And I did. And so I bopped my husband over the head and said, "We're going up north, and to be closer to my grandparents again, and to live at home as an adult." I think we were 30 maybe when we moved back, somewhere in there. Okay. And experience it through new eyes. I always knew I wanted to raise kids up here. I didn't want to have anyone, I didn't want to do it down south. So we moved back up this way. I've been here since 2009, back in my hometown, in my home area. I've done a little bit of everything. I've worked at Kraft Heinz, so I've done corporate stuff and corporate training and compliance. I worked at Lavelle Academy for 5 years. Realized my heart wasn't in teaching, and it was before the pandemic. So I got out before it got bad, what I consider bad. And then I worked at Walmart. And then most recently, before my newest job, is working for Prevention Coalition. So it was through the Drug-Free Communities grant, which is a federal grant. We worked for the D.O.G.E coalition, and we created a great group of people across different sectors, from law enforcement, teachers, parents, students, all across, to really work on preventing drugs and alcohol with our youth, especially vaping. I like to think that we created a little bit of something when it was youth-driven. They're now more focused on adult alcohol use, which is great too, because in this area we have such high rates of usage. And then now I work at Samaritan, and I'm their grant writer so that I can help get stories. That's what I love. I love creating and finding those stories and getting them out to people and making sure that our area is being represented in the best light that it possibly can.
That's really That's really fascinating because it's a lot of what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, exactly. You're a storyteller. You've got the same thing, and we've got such a beautiful place that sometimes I want to share it with the world. Sometimes I don't. I want to keep it all to myself because when you go up to like I don't know, any like Flat Rock, and it's just gorgeous, and there's so much that's beautiful here that you just want others to share in, but then you want to keep it all to yourself too.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you want to keep it pristine.
Best kept secret of New York. You mentioned that you knew that you wanted to raise your family here. What do you think that was about, aside from obviously the landscape and stuff?
Being next to family. Family and extended family is key. If we were down south, it truly does take a village, and we wouldn't have had the same village that we have here. My daughter, before my grandparents passed, got to experience great-grandparent love like I did. Yeah. And that's really something. She had tea parties with my grandmother. Like, it was just so special to watch the two of them together. And so I wouldn't trade any of that for the world. Even being in some of the most beautiful places in, Raleigh and in Charlotte and other places like that, it's nothing compared to being back home with family. Sometimes we look at it as, because we are born and raised, we know families and we know people, and we can say, okay, who's your brother and who's your family and who's this? Yeah. And I think it might be hard for some people coming in, through the Fort Drum and others, that to feel that acceptance sometimes. Sure. I know even the difference between Lewis County and Jefferson County. Sometimes when I'm at work and all the ladies are talking about so-and-so is related to so-and-so, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on right now. Yeah. So it's even just 40 minutes away from each other, we have a completely separate ecosystem of everything. So it's interesting. But we do have a sense of community like no other. I saw it most recently during the floods. My parents had a huge issue with the flooding that happened, it was 2 years ago? Almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in July. And they lost a lot of things. They had a house, their whole basement was flooded. It didn't reach to the top level, but the entire garage up to a certain point. It didn't hit into the house, but it came very, very close. The next day, the Amish down the street were there to help muck out. Friends, neighbors bringing over things to try and help and pull things out. We knew we could instantly count on people. Food for days, tents were set up within minutes, and we were able to dry and save some things. My parents had a thrift store and a thrift, antique, and consignment shop in Lavelle for the longest time. Okay. And so all of their inventory was in that basement. Right. They had just gotten rid of the shop, were semi-retiring, and so they lost, we don't even know how many thousands of dollars of things. But just knowing your community is there for you in ways that I don't think happens in other places. Yep. And I think it's special. It's special for all of us to remember that. And it's special to remember that even in the height of all this intense feelings around politics and what's going on in the world, that we can still look at each other as humans that need help, which was key. We have a group even around here that calls themselves Taking Care of Our Own. And truly, I love that exceptionalism of wanting to do that. But then on the flip side, looking at it at the state level and agencies and working together, I was in the nonprofit world for quite a while. You don't want to be siloed. And sometimes we lose some of that ability to work well with others. We have models that work really well. For a while, our mental health model, for instance, was one of the best in the state. If we don't share that and get that information out, it's lost. And we see a lot of our regionality, grants are being given to I'm so off topic and I'm sorry. So I hope you can edit where you need to and do what you need to.
You're doing great.
Sometimes grants are given to a region, and Lewis County is lumped in with Jefferson and St. Lawrence, which are their own kinds of things. And they know that because our population is only 27,000, we're not going to get the best of the resources or the most of the money versus if we're going after something on our own. And which is why I think we have such rugged individualism, or a group, and I mean individualism as a county individualism that we don't see in other places.
Yeah, and I think too there's a lot of different aspects of this area in particular with the weather and the climate around here. Like, you kind of have to stick together. And I think that has been a core throughout generations. Obviously it's becoming easier to live up here with modern technology.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but it wasn't always that way.
No.
And you really relied on your neighbor.
Yes.
Even if you weren't related. And I think a lot of that gets passed down generation to generation, which I'm thankful for.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And It's interesting because we look at the political level from up above at a federal level, but then when we get to the local level and the county level and even the town boards, we might not necessarily all care what the R or the D is behind the name. I look at it as, okay, well, that legislature was at my grandparents' funeral and sang the most beautiful song. Do you know what I mean? And then you can look at people differently and have conversations that maybe would have been a little bit harder when you're not quite on the same level, or you've got something else in between.
Yeah, I think that anytime you're speaking contentious topics or stuff around politics, if you don't have a relationship, at least preliminarily, it can be very hard to navigate that without hurting feelings, without casting aspersions, without judgment. And so it is a hard thing when stuff is happening so fast and it's on our phones and we know what's happening, to then kind of filter that through to then who you talk to about it. Especially when it comes to online spaces, but we'll get off to that.
Sorry. That's like, whoa.
Tell me about your involvement in the county and the party.
So how that even came about. I was very angry the first time that Trump was elected. I saw what was going to happen. I looked at it from a moral and his characteristics didn't align with my values. I was not happy the first administration, and I felt powerless. And then 2020 hit, and we were all looking for ways to get involved, to help foster and to change things and to move forward. And there was a floundering group of Democrats here. My grandfather actually was a Democratic chair for a while here in Lewis County. He's the whole reason I became a Democrat. I was going to be an independent for the longest time. I was like, I'm going to be an independent. I'm going to vote for who I want to. And he's like, Christ, girl, you need to get a grip because you need to pick a party and pick a side. And I'm like, well, do we really have to? And we can get into days and days about why the two-party system is not a functioning system for our government at all. But, but he said, well, if you're going to vote in primaries, you're going to have to pick a side. And so, I had to make Grandpa happy. And so I knew that I was most aligned with what the Democrats at the time thought. So I seeked out the party itself, and at that point, it was pretty much not a functioning group. So a group of us got together and decided that we were going to reinstate this. I don't know if you've, ever heard it said that you have to be a Republican in Lewis County.
No, but I would imagine you kind of mentioned that what was the word you used for how the party was before in the county? In
disarray and not
just lacking
viable.
Organization.
Yeah, not viable. They weren't real. Well, to be fair, the old chair had passed away, kind of left things in flux. Yeah. That's why I'm a big proponent now of training others so that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, they can function without me. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be on one person's shoulders to carry everything. And that's what's great about this group is they're very strong, independent, thoughtful people who really want the best, not only for the county, but for the country, and who have very strong opinions on how we can best do that. Mm-hmm. Because when we know more and when we know better, we do better. Yeah. And as a group, we really want to I just want my neighbors to succeed. I just want them to be happy, and I don't care what makes them happy as long as it's making them happy and we can all get somewhere together. So,
is that a hard place to be in when a lot of maybe your neighbors are more conservatively bent? That must be an uphill battle.
It is, but I will say, I've been chair about 2 years at this point. And the first year I was very nervous. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to admit that I was a Democrat out loud, and I didn't want to say things. And now, last year, so it's funny, the flood happened, and they couldn't have the parade. We were going to march in the parade.
Yes.
And the flood happened, and I was like, oh, thank you. I don't have to do this. I really did. I was like, thank you for the flood. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. You know what I mean? Like it was the second time it flooded, so I was, my parents' house was fine. Okay. But it was the second time, and I was like, oh gosh, thank you. I don't have to go and do this, because I was so afraid of the judgment and so making up stories in my head about how people were going to be. And then this year, I felt less afraid. I was like, you know what? This past year, I was like, you know what? We deserve to be here just as much as a Republican does. We deserve to walk. And we had 15, 20 people walk with our little group. And yeah, there might have been a comment here or there, but people waved, people clapped, people, at least if they didn't say anything. So they can still be respectful. You can still find a way. We didn't get pelted with like rocks like was in my head, or tomatoes, or like candy get thrown back at us or something, which would have been kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. Having a little piece of candy on my walk.
Maybe it's a marketing tool there.
Hand
maybe.
Out
candy and you say you can throw this at us at the parade.
Perfect. They took my candy,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm like, those kids loved
fair.
it. So, it was something about not letting fear take over, and to realize that yes, you can be a Democrat here. You can have different feelings and values. You can see things differently, and it's going to be okay. We had a booth at the fair this year. We've done fundraisers throughout the county, and every time we've done a fundraiser or when we've had the protests, we always add a community element to that. So canned food drives and water drives. And we brought that several times to all the food pantries, and we're able to give just a little bit more. Some of our proceeds go to those kinds of things to help that we're making sure that we're not just benefiting, but our community is as well.
Yeah.
So
that takes a lot of courage, especially in an area that doesn't maybe agree with you on a lot.
Yeah.
Or I would honestly think that I have a lot of different viewpoints on things than people in my family. And the truth is that there's a lot of nuance in all of these different kinds of things. And we don't approach it that way. We approach it like black and white. Here's how it has to be. Like the truth is, we might agree on 90% of a topic.
Yeah.
And just disagree with the prescription or how we carry that out to make it better, which is usually the case.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might think that, well, if you notice, I'm not blue-haired and I don't have a septum ring and I'm not like this, this person who's like down with everything and down with law enforcement. My brother is a law enforcement officer in Sussex County in Long Island.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He helps open my eyes. And that's a whole other thing, too, because we don't have the same viewpoints. And right now we're not getting along as well as I wish we could, because it is contentious, even within families. Mm-hmm. You're right. And, when you're talking to different folks about your viewpoints, you might think, oh, well, she's, a liberal Democrat and she hates guns. I have 3. You know what I mean? Like, we're not, do I agree with the way that things are? And do I own an AK-47? No. Will I ever? Absolutely not. And so we might see things differently on some things, or even like gun reform, or the way that things were handled with the raise the age and some of the things that affect law enforcement and parole and who gets pardons and
we cash bail.
We actually probably don't agree. We probably do agree a little bit more. Man, that could have been rolled out differently, or we could have handled that policy in a different way. The intent might have been good, but it didn't happen. It's like I worked in prevention for a very, very long time. I know the dangers of marijuana in kids' hands. So seeing these cannabis farms just up everywhere, and now I think Watertown is allowing some here. Lewis County still has kept it pretty without, a dispensary in Lewis County, because I know it's dangerous and I don't want it for my kids, and I don't want it closer, and I know what those vapes can do. So we don't have to, and I'm sure you might even feel the same, and because in law enforcement, you don't really want people with drugs, having access and being closer and all the issues that come with that. So there are nuances. There are ways that we can probably see each other. And it's when you're sitting down having these conversations that you actually are like, okay, well, it's the rhetoric and it's the words us and them and those people that really becomes an issue. Words matter. Mm-hmm. But there are certain hard lines that, like right now, what I saw 2 days or 3 days ago, or no, it's been a week now, Renee Good was murdered. Like, I will not look at it any differently. But I'm open to hearing other opinions and listening to nuances and doing research and looking at things from my brother's perspective, from your perspective, because I've never been in that situation to know what is good and what is bad. Mm. I think intents were good between, okay, we got to get criminals out of the country. what's happening now is not okay. It's not. It's 60 and 30. It's people who are going in for immigration and they're going to get their green cards, or right up to the point that they're going to take the oath and they're getting yanked. That's not the intent. So we have a right to feel those anger. We have a right to voice our opinion. And even when we're in a protest, we're peaceful. We're respectful. We don't step out in front of folks. We protect people if someone were to come up, but we're not going to step in front of traffic, and we're not going to be in the way. We're going to have our voices heard just like anyone else who maybe had a Charlie Kirk protest or memorial. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I'm not going to invade or yell or scream at you or give you the finger salute. We had a lot of that, but we have the same right as others. And I think it also helps in this area for people to see that, who might be feeling, gosh, I don't really like what I'm seeing. I don't agree with this. Are there others who feel the same? And so us being visible and not scared is part of that, is being out and saying it's okay to feel that's okay too. Mm-hmm. It's okay to change your mind.
Do you think that the us versus them, in the way that people look at each other this way, do you think that that's mostly from party animus toward each other, media influence, because it's certainly ramping up, and it's obviously there's a cause there. Is it because more people are ingesting their phones and not so much engaging with reality on a daily basis? What do you think?
I think social media and media in general, or is meant to divide. It's supposed to be the most salacious headline at the loudest point to engage and to get clicks and things. And even the way things are written. And we have the ability with our phones and with social media to just quickly, within a heartbeat, have that video or that story and to already make a story in our minds. I will say, from my point of view, the administration does not help that.
Right.
Taking case the point, within minutes of this happening, this Renee Good was already being discussed as this domestic terrorist. And when you use words like that, words have meaning. It did not do anyone justice, because I like to sit back and say, okay, due process and let this whole thing play out. I might think he's a murderer. I might think what I saw is that, but I'm not there. I'm seeing the video from one point of view, and I'm not collecting the evidence and being on the scene.
Right.
So, even in the case of Charlie Kirk's murder, I think a lot of people thought that we were all celebrating and reveling and having a grand old time in the street. That was no one's intention, I don't think, from my point of view. I wasn't going to cry about it, but I'm also like, that should not have happened. And I was sad for his family and for his friends and for the people who had to witness that, because that's a trauma that those college kids had to deal with on a very personal level.
Everybody dealt with it, not just them.
Yeah, we knew within seconds.
If you
that
saw
was
the video
an unaltered
clip,
video, and it was
shocking.
I just remember putting it down and and the way I felt, it was unfortunate. It was terrible, and I don't like that we use those kinds of things to propagate this narrative that it is us versus them. From my own point of view, even looking at the social media or the new timeline that the White House has for January 6th, we all watched it unravel. And I remember sitting with she was 4-year-old at that point, just sobbing because it felt like the end of democracy to me in those moments. And then to see it whitewashed and things rewritten, I can't imagine being a police officer on the Capitol that day who then has to see this and think that their sacrifice or their brother's sacrifices were for nothing. And the members of Congress who were traumatized, who that had to be super intense and scary, and who were hiding in rooms and in offices, coming up with signals so they knew who was who. That is something we haven't had to experience in this country. And so it's new for all of us, but to see that sort of thing rewritten is interesting and scary, and it frightens me to the core. But we can't move from a place of fear. We have to move from a place of fact. So I find it difficult sometimes to navigate with someone who's very, very far right, because I'm able to mutate and change points of view. and take into consideration how people might be feeling, or realize that I might not have all the facts before I spout off something, and then I can pull back and read another article, but I don't always feel that's the same on that side. It's, this was said, this was spoken on Fox News, and now I'm going to parrot the same thing. So if you can't take in information and take in new and change your mind, that's not growth, that's not learning, that's not helping each other to focus and get farther.
I completely agree. And one step further would be the humility to say I was wrong about something.
100%. I'm dealing with that myself personally. Like I mentioned before, my brother is a cop. He was my biggest hero growing up. He was my younger brother, but like he really was. And seeing, and then he wasn't even what I would consider MAGA. That I would think that he is law enforcement. He sees things a different way that I didn't. I might be that bleeding heart liberal who wants to help that drug addict, and he sees it daily, day after day on the streets. And you get compassion fatigue, and you get a sense of just, I can't deal with this anymore. Yeah. And I'm on the other end wanting to save every life, and even if they take something from me, it's okay, and so we just see things differently. And after the election, I was angry. I was livid. I felt betrayed. I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think we would do this again. I didn't think we'd be sitting here in the state of things where in a few days we might invade Greenland. Like, I didn't think that we would be here. And so many people told me I was overreacting. And so many people said, he's not going to do that. He just talks. Well, here we are. And the things that we're seeing and the policies that we're seeing happen, it is happening. And we have to be honest with ourselves and with each other that, I made a mistake. I messed up, and it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And I don't think it's hyperbole to sit and say this is probably the end of democracy as we know it, until we as a group together, right and left, say, you know what, let's find our humanity, and this is not what we need to do. This is not where we need to be. But I was angry. I was very angry at him, and at everyone. I'm still dealing with that. I still have a hard time. I didn't go to the family reunion. Christmas was contentious. There were things said that I wish I could take back because I was coming from a place of fear and anger, and it was so new, and I didn't want to hear his gloating. And I knew he probably wouldn't have done that. But in my head, the stories I told myself were he's going to gloat and he's going to do this, and I don't want to go and visit him. And I said some mean things. So now I have to have humility and grace and try to repair a relationship, because in the long run, who's going to come if I were to get sick? Who's going to blow my driveway out or give me, who'd probably give me the shirt off his back? Him and his wife would be up here in a heartbeat. So I don't mean to get emotional, but it's finding that humility to go, I screwed up. I came from a place of fear, and now I need to step back, rethink, and apologize. And also let's find a way to get past that.
It pulls to what actually matters. Like at the end of the day, if you would look past the daily updates from everything that's going on around the world, I honestly don't think that, from my Christian worldview, I don't know if we were meant to know all of that stuff. It's beyond us. We can't deal with it. We're not supposed to know every single piece of information that happens all the time. And it's just too much for us.
It is.
Mentally, it's a hard place to be. One of the points that I was going to make was, we're such a product of our environment and our experiences. That goes without saying. But I think that a lot of our opinions are products of the algorithms in our phone. And just like you and I could see the same exact instance on something and have totally different opinions about it. And I think in my law enforcement career, I got to see this firsthand, not only with just calls that we would go on and then see how that call was represented in the media, when I actually know the facts of the case and they don't, and how it was spun and all of these different things. Then to see, I was in law enforcement during George Floyd. I was in law enforcement during Ma'Khia Bryant, Breonna Taylor, all of these different things. And to then kind of dive deeper into those, because I had lots of discussions with people that I know. And a couple from, inner city New York City, who we had really good conversations, about law enforcement and the African American community and like how we deal with these things. And amazing to see how probably I saw an angle they didn't see. Mm-hmm. They saw an angle I didn't see. Totally different opinions on the same thing.
That's why I loved being down south and teaching down south. I would say we're Wonder Bread white up here. You know, we're
Right.
so white. We just have a certain way, and that's fine. But I thought I was more open-minded than I was until I had to confront my own internal biases and racism when teaching down south. And not only just racism or my own thoughts, it was also, I would even say it's class too. And being able to realize that someone who's coming from, we had in this one school I was teaching, we had very, very rich kids and very, very poor. And so we had to institute a uniforms, a uniform dress code, but not like actual uniforms where it was all like everybody wears khakis and everyone has the same thing. Yep. And my biases towards even students who wouldn't look me in the eye when I'm talking to them, and to realize and unlearn some behaviors that just because they aren't. I did that with my ESL students, my English as a second language students. In Asian culture, it is disrespectful to look someone in the eye. And until you sit back and really take that other opinion in, you don't know what you don't know. And you can't do better until, you know more. And so that was really eye-opening for me. And I really do try to sit and figure out, probably to a fault, like how can we better understand each other? It's on that other side, to use that phrase. How do we try and navigate and think differently about things? And so that's one of the reasons I did come, that we were brave enough to show up, because I want to be, how do we think differently? Yeah. Why do we think differently? And how can we overcome some of that, or at least come away as better people, and at least have listened to each other, kind of thing?
I think that you said the more you know, the more you don't know, more or less. Yeah. And the more that you decide that you're going to know more, the more you realize how much you don't know, actually. Yeah. And a great quote that we had from my, he's not really my adopted brother, but basically, and he's from Harlem, Bronx area. And he said, was quoting somebody and said, there are as many ways to see a thing as there are people to see it.
100%, because we're all taking our own personal values, our own morals, our own eyesight. If I take these off, I'm going to see it completely differently. You're just going to do things differently and see things differently than everyone else. Yeah. And which is true. Mm-hmm. Is there a truth? Is there one singular universal truth? Yeah. I don't know. To one situation, I don't think so. I think everyone takes in a different thing.
And then you start to talk about, you're kind of talking about exposing yourself to different cultures and different ways of thinking and ideas and other people's experiences. And the more that you can do that, the better. Like, we live in America. America is not homogenous. No. Like, we all come from different backgrounds. The United States is massive, for one thing. So Arizona has a very different lifestyle than Colorado, and, Florida to California. It's totally different. We're not different countries.
This county, it takes an hour and 42 minutes to get from the southern end to Harrisville, to get from one end of the county to the other on the long end. Because, well, first of all, the roads are crap and they all meander through whatever. But it takes an hour and 42 minutes. How do I know? Because I've done it through coalition work. Yep. So I had to get from Harrisville to South Louis in a day and do prevention classes. Hour and 42 minutes, and even the differences between towns. I mean, look at it, the Beaver River Lewis Lavelle rivalry for so many years. I would say it's probably a little less now than it was. I don't know. I'm not
because Lavelle put a beat down for a long time.
I don't know.
You better say that.
I was to say it is wrestling season, so maybe that's been renewed a little bit. But I think because they're in different divisions now, or Frontier Division versus whatever, they're different. So maybe it's died down. But even just within towns and within people, like it is so.
Yeah, within families. You're different. A perfect example.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's interesting to listen and to watch. And taking in other people's perspectives is key. Yeah. And having these conversations and just sitting down and listening. I mean, I might not agree, and I might think that everything is full of crap and that you don't know what you're saying. And I would probably say COVID didn't help, because we became so much more isolated. Yeah. That we didn't have conversations as much as we used to. But
at least not face to face, right? That they were all online in anger and solitude and.
Oh, well, look at Zoom, you can only talk one person at a time. Like, it's not going to let you talk over someone. So, and I'm a big like, oh my gosh, I had a different thought, so I have to like talk over you. So I don't know. It's interesting in that sense of where we are as a group and as a person, as a people. But I feel like we all want each other to succeed. I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be different, and I saw some extreme racism down south, and I saw it in people that I know and worked with, and you're going to have that no matter what. And are you going to change people's minds all the time? No, but again, they're a product of their own environment and their own house and their own learning. And so if you don't do the work to unlearn, that's key. I mean, there are folks that live here for a really long time. I mean, I think even my grandmother was 99 when she passed, and it was still used the word colored because, that's just what grandma did. You know what I mean? Like, but you also need to think, you need to take a step back, and you need to unlearn what you don't learn or what you don't know. And that was eye-opening for me, that first year teaching. I thought that I had the perfect project for Dia de los Muertos, which is a Day of the Dead, and you have to make an altar. Well, we were going to make altars and all those things, and it was an awesome idea. It's a very, very Christian area with, it's more evangelistic down in down south. And I had the principal just came to me and said, we're not doing that. You can't, you're going to have to come up with an alternate activity for this kid. And I was raging. I was just like, because in my thought, it was righteous and it's cultural and it has nothing to do with religion. And to them, it might have been devil worship, in their mind. And I can't change their minds in that sense, but I can be sensitive to and offer an alternative and try and do something to work around that maybe the kid got to see the other people's work, but didn't have to participate in it. And it's as simple as that. It's making those accommodations for each other and realizing that not everyone is going to think the same or be on the same level or have read the same books or that kind of thing.
How important is it? We touched really quickly about clickbaity, 3-second clips. Now everybody has an opinion. How important is it to filter a situation through multiple different kinds of news sources, even?
I think it's important. I would never trust one news source. I try to refrain. Sometimes it gets me. We're all human. Like today, I made a comment that maybe I shouldn't have, but it was in response to seeing something else. No, I said I shouldn't have, and then I added a but. So it immediately negated everything I said beforehand.
Right, yeah.
So I caught myself.
Psychology 101.
I caught myself. I've engaged in I wouldn't say non-professional, but just in a way, I came from a place of anger. And I knew it as soon as I wrote it, and emotionally I was like, okay, that was what I did. But also maybe sometimes if I have those moments or if someone else does that to me, it makes me pause and think and stop and really take that in. And I think it's important that no one source is going to give you everything. I think media literacy needs to be covered more in school, especially with our graduating seniors and such. I would say high schoolers in general. And honestly, they're a lot better than some of us, to be quite honest. It's been a while since I've been in school and teaching, but they can catch BS quick, and they can tend to see things. If you even just look at, old propaganda pictures and that are starting to come back up, and you're like, oh, hey, that one land, one homeland, we've heard that before. And seeing those kinds of things through eyes again, but our kids are better at picking that stuff out sometimes. As adults, we need to think, okay, maybe the news source that I'm watching, I should see something on the other side. Even if you're uncomfortable, I don't love watching Fox News, but I will put it on or I'll listen to a segment for a little bit because I need to know what others are thinking or how others are looking at the same situation, the same information, and how can I be a bridge to help see it differently to someone who's open to it, and how can I maybe take in something different?
Right.
That a little piece that go, oh, wow, that made me stop and think for a minute. Mm-hmm. I think that's key too. And a lot of people don't do that introspective and aren't taking the time to read multiple layers of things. Right. I, unfortunately, will read things forever and always and try and take in as much as I can, which is a blessing and a curse, I would say, because sometimes you're like, okay.
Yeah, it feels like it consumes you, or you have to do so much extra research to kind of get through all the fluff and all the ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. and it is amazing too that when people see something, how quick they'll go to who they think they trust. And a word that was in high school a lot when I was there, I'm not sure if it was much after, but critical thinking skills was like, I can't imagine how many times my teachers were saying critical thinking. And then I don't see that in public discourse like anywhere.
Not as much as I would hope.
Yeah.
Critical thinking skills are key. And it was something that we even did in college, but, and not to play the sideism or the whataboutism, but like, that shouldn't be looked at as a negative thing. And it's not a liberal concept, but it's sometimes keyed towards that. You hear, oh, well, that, you went to college, so you're a liberal. Like, really?
I went to college too.
Right? Like, okay. And we both had different experiences and came out, well, not necessarily different, but, maybe on different ends of the spectrum, and are fluid too. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. Where did we get so hell-bent that we had to be on one source, one thing, one idea? And that's scary. And I don't know how we could sit and ponder for hours and hours and until my 8:00 appointment tomorrow morning at 8:15. Like it is one of those things. Where are we going to ever solve the world's problems in that sense? No, because people are people and they're going to do. The flexibility. You have to be flexible. You have to take in other information. And like you said, admit when maybe you didn't have all the facts or all the information and all the things.
Or reacted emotionally or didn't look at it from all sides. Or, I mean, I follow a few different news sources, not closely. A lot of independent news. I love most of that stuff because there's track record. And by the way, if they get something wrong, well, they're out of business, and then they don't have this corporate pressure and funding and whatever else. But it is interesting to see when people are almost lazy and is like, oh, I read a 2-second headline that popped up on my phone. Guess I know what happened.
Now I know everything.
Yeah. How often does that happen? All the time.
Too often. Or I read just this little bit right at the beginning and it told me what to think. Yeah. Or I watched this news segment for 5 seconds and it's perfectly in line with what I envisioned and valued.
It comes down to the individual being able to decipher through nonsense and what's being spun to them and possible conflicts of interest and motives and stuff like that. I honestly think that this is not a shot at boomers, but
I'm not one. Shoot away.
I really do believe, especially through the pandemic, but I believe that there was so much trust in institutions and a little bit blindly in some cases to a naive side of seeing things that they're telling me this, so that must be true. Like Walter Cronkite would just give me the facts, and that's how it was.
Boy, those were easier times, weren't they? And Dan Rather would just come.
You don't know as much.
Dan Rather would just come in and tell me exactly what I needed to know, and his voice was so soothing in the 80s. Yeah, absolutely.
But I saw people on the conservative right who would have somebody come in to a situation and think that person is 100% trustworthy. That person, they're 100% trustworthy. And then within a couple of months, once there was actually some scrutiny and stuff like that, being like, that guy, he's out. And you're like,
well, I'll tell you, for instance, from my point of view, I thought Andrew Cuomo is just the most wonderful thing since sliced bread. I would live for those COVID updates.
Yep.
I thought he was just the ideal. He's going to be president next because look, he can sit and talk, and he navigated everything so well. And we're coming out of this so much better than we thought we would, and there's hope here. Meanwhile, the president's saying inject bleach or use UV light on something, and I'm like, well, that's hokey. But then on the other side, since then, coming out of it, you can look at it and go, thousands of our senior citizens died in homes alone. We didn't do a great job, and we hid things, and we didn't do X, Y, Z, or maybe we should have responded differently. Did he help to make sure that people got information and people were alive and survived? I think so, but there was a cost there. But it wasn't one way or the other. It's not a hero villain. It's a gamut of ways to feel. And Then when the sexual assault allegations came out against him, well, then that's another thing that just said absolutely not. And then his most recent loss to Mamdani and seeing his Islamophobia come out and those kinds of things, you can change your opinion on people and you can look at people, and I wouldn't say cancel culture. Sometimes it's okay. I was a huge Taylor Swift fan. I didn't go to the Eras Tour. I wanted to. Dang it. But, and now, pretty much there's no ethical billionaire, and I can change opinions and I can see things differently and maybe not agree with. And so, not to get completely off topic, but it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay that people have different nuances and different sides and different things to them. And no human is infallible. No person is, I hate to think that anyone is supremely evil. I don't even think that Donald Trump is evil. I think he's misguided. I think he has a lot of people in his ears. I think he's not feeling the best, to be honest with you. And so all of those factors play into how he might not be putting his best self forward, or that clip that was cut is making him look a certain way. Right now there's one surfacing of him doing this weird sound effect. I want to know what was before and after. Why do you keep showing me this 7-second clip of him acting like this? But what is the nuance and what is the stuff before that?
Yeah.
And
which is the right approach, because most of what you're seeing is of course not the full picture. And you see that all the time. And I think the broader idea of kind of what I was getting to was, now as the media landscape is so accessible, and it's not, I have to wait for the newspaper to come in the mail, or I have to watch Dan Rather at a certain amount of time, or whatever. It's more like there's so many more alternative viewpoints that people who they put 100% trust in based on probably faulty or limited knowledge, let's say, once that stuff came to light, it was like, should be eye-opening, I would hope, for right and left, doesn't matter, to be like, oh, okay, so I was pretty uninformed for a long time. And how do I make sure that is mitigated in the future?
I think you even have to be careful with your independent journalists in that
100%.
sense. The Candace Owenses, or not even that, but even V Under the Desk News. There are other sources. I'm thinking of a liberal one versus a conservative source. They have their own biases and their own spins, and they're going to say things on different levels. And not quote sources, or we really like to think and vilify, corporate media as being bought out or having a certain turn or being state run or, whatever it happens to be. But also that person who might consider themselves a journalist isn't trained, didn't go through classes, not all of them, or didn't learn and went through a different path and then want their own spin on things. So you can't always take those into consideration. Yep. It's as simple as, going back to a scientific theory. There are certain things that we do and we've tested and we have data for. You don't want to just say something is hokey, or, ivermectin didn't work, or I have essential oils. I love them. I'll swear by them. It might be in my brain, but I haven't been sick too terribly this year. You know what I mean? And we use oils in our house.
Cold plunging.
Go ahead. Cold plunge. Exactly. It's why we're healthy.
Don't say anything bad about cold plunging.
I think cold plunging sounds amazing. I personally haven't done it.
Next time you come on, you'll come on. You'll go in.
It's the same thing. Like, we don't have scientific proof, but maybe if we actually did those studies, we'd find it's just like, you can't say that it's all big pharma and it's all right and all of it's great. Eastern medicine has been happening holistically, and acupuncture and things like that. That you can't test a certain way. It's just like how I feel about prevention. It's the hardest thing to prove that scientifically or through data that prevention worked, because you're keeping something from happening.
Right.
So how do you have numbers, or how do I prove that because they didn't do this or saw a DARE program in 1976 that it helped them not smoke weed or grow up to be have an addiction problem?
Yeah.
How do you prove what isn't preventable? Yeah. It's how I feel about vaccines in that sense. Like, we know that for years it's worked, and now that we're seeing a lower herd immunity, there's 100 new cases in South Carolina of measles. We haven't had to deal with that before. I'm not saying that everyone has to get vaccines and vaccinated, if whatever your opinions are, but we have to keep it to a certain level, and then these things come back. Because we've been lured into this sense of false hope. I think that's true with everything. We've been lured into this sense of false hope, false protection that we tend to go, oh, it's just seatbelts. They're now talking about taking seatbelts out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was something that came up, and I'm like, and airbags. Well, let's just take away things that we know. Yes, and I'm like, why are we doing this now? We want to
what's interesting?
We want to take away some of that stuff.
I actually have a funny opinion about seatbelts and law enforcement.
Ooh, yeah, I was gonna say you see things differently.
Well, it's only because it's hard for me how you can justify fining somebody for doing something that would prevent them injury, but you can ride a motorcycle.
I know. Don't
without a helmet in a lot of states. So how does, I don't know. It just seems.
No, I get
just
it.
from I don't know. Yeah.
I 100%.
But no airbags.
No airbags.
Airbags are good.
I like
Turns
airbags.
out, I've seen people go through windshields without those, and I would recommend keeping those.
Please keep airbags in my car. I haven't needed one in a while, but
yes.
when I've hit a deer in the past, I was really happy that I had an airbag.
And you should wear your seatbelts.
Yes, you should. Please wear your seatbelt.
But I always thought that it was interesting because in Connecticut, you don't have to wear a helmet. Same
thing down south.
It's not an infraction to. Yeah. And so I thought that was kind of silly. But
yeah, right. I mean, can you see that?
But we would go out and look for seatbelt violations. Like that was a state funded thing. Like that's what they wanted to see. And I remember being like, it's a little hypocritical to say, I'm going to fine you because you're not taking your own safety seriously. But if you want to get a motorcycle and drive without a helmet,
drive away.
Just go do it.
In fact, just sell your car and get a.
That was a total rabbit trail, but
sorry.
No, yeah. Back onto the point though. I think that exactly what you're saying is very refreshing to hear, and I think that I would parrot a lot of the same exact things.
I think we both would. I think when we sit down and have a conversation, or we sit down and have coffee together, we actually are not far away from each other, but. So it makes me wonder from a higher perspective, why? Why is this being sown? Why are these divisions happening? And, we all have our conspiracy theories, and I would say it's not right or left, it's up and down. And that is, for me, a huge thing, and that goes back to that no ethical billionaire. No one should have the means of their productions taken from them, which is, why I'm a big advocate for unions and all of the things that happen there. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps when they're taking the sole of your shoe. It just can't happen. So personally, we have to get over this divisions that are being sowed between us and look maybe, why are things, why haven't we raised the federal minimum wage in 10, 15 years now? Why are we not protecting folks and keeping them happier? Why are we taking money away from programs that we know work because of waste, fraud, and abuse? Well, do we know that exists? Or is it a small amount that we're focused on and that we're going to punish a huge group of kids? Lover or hater, Kathy Hochul has been one of a proponent for universal food for every kid in schools. I have money. I don't have a lot. I have money. I could feed my kid every single day and make her pay the $2, $3 if she wants extra lunch every single day. But I'm not going to. But I'm happy to take and use that program because it's helping everyone. And in the long run, too, it's also maybe helping some kids who don't have to go hungry and who don't have to pay a lunch due that's exorbitant at the end. No one should have to be fundraising or doing GoFundMes to have a funeral. These kinds of things, I guess. I know I'm off topic in a million different directions, but I just want my neighbors to do good.
Yeah.
Right. I want them to have a good life.
Right. And I think ultimately that should be everybody's end goal is, it's a better place when people aren't starving.
Yeah. When we're all doing better, we're doing better.
Exactly. A rising tide lifts all boats.
100%.
Yeah. And how do we do that in practical application becomes the tricky part when you're in these systems, I guess, these political systems where it seems like most places are just like the country is basically 50-50. It's pretty close.
It's close.
Like it's not that far off from that. So how do you make everybody happy? Not possible, seems like. My prescription is to look at your immediate reach. Who can you help? I'm not talking about not advocating for things that you believe in at all, but most of this stuff comes back to the individual for me. If you want to decipher news through your own filter, that's probably the best way to do it instead of going out and trying to find somebody else to tell you what you want to hear. Same is true with these kind of situations. Like, look, I'm not going to be, I've heard a lot of people who are not happy with how taxes are spent. Okay. You know, like, what can you actually do about that?
So vote.
Right.
Because if you don't vote, you don't have a say.
Correct.
I really am angry not only at huge Trump MAGA supporters, and I'll separate that from conservatives, because I think there is a difference.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing more of that as the split's happening and things are just going super awry. You're seeing people who are fiscally conservative, who do worry about those tax dollars, who don't want to see it going places, who do have those feelings that are going, whoa, I don't like all this other stuff right now. So you're seeing, I'll separate the two. But I'm more mad at the people who just stayed home, because then you don't get a say. Then anything that you try and type on your little, I don't care, because you didn't take it seriously.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe we were instilled at my age that voting was a civic duty. I vote in what yesterday's Laval had a little thing for the land. Uh-huh. I vote in every election, regardless of how big or how small, because 6 votes can make a difference here.
Sure.
I wouldn't say just even get involved by voting, run for an office.
Yeah.
One of the goals that we've had here with the Democratic Committee is no seat left unchallenged by 2028. Why are we just giving up seats? Why are we giving up positions with not giving people a choice? And that's one thing we heard certainly at this last election. People came to us and they were like, if you had more Democrats on the line, we would have voted Democrat all the way through. No, is that healthy? No. Should you make an informed opinion and actually know the person and talk to them?
By the candidate.
Yes. Yeah. Should you look at candidates individually? Did I vote for Stefanik once? Yes. You know what I mean? There are things that you do and you look at, do I regret it now? Yes. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. Yeah. But you have to make sure that you're giving people choice. When you don't even put someone on a ballot, and that's the absolute ridiculousness of the two-party system, or having the difficulty of trying to run as an independent candidate, the rules and laws for running independent are completely different, and it's more, and it's intensive. So run as a candidate or be a candidate yourself. I'm hoping to put my money where my mouth is and to run to show people what that's like. Be a candidate, know your candidates, go to meetings. You know, it's one thing to complain about the 8% tax rate here in Laval or in Lewis County, which is not that high really for sales tax. If you're not informed, if you don't go to the legislator meetings, if you don't have your voice heard, something, and a lot of people, and I'm guilty of it, I'm not going to go to a meeting unless it's something that affects me personally. And that's not the right way either. I should just sit and go to every meeting. I wish I had time to do every single meeting.
That's a huge balance
point. That's where the coalition comes in. That's where the committee comes in. Each person is from a different spot. Yeah. That if one person is going to that meeting, they can report back at the monthly meeting. We can kind of get an idea of what's happening all over the area. It's not one person getting the information and bringing it to the group. Okay. It's not me being in charge of all of it and saying, well, this is what was said and this is how you should feel about it. It's groups of people going to different things, getting involved at the local level, because this is where your day-to-day is. If you're not involved in your local politics, if you're not running for office, if you're not learning at least who your legislature is so that you can talk to them, that is a big problem. And that is where the day-to-day, federal policy is federal policy, but in the end of the day, there's so many things that are happening in the courts, it takes years before a decision is made. Yeah. You know what doesn't take years? Is that thing that is going to affect us
like yesterday.
Yeah, and now it didn't pass. Yep. And so now, they're going to have to figure out something differently or repropose it, or hopefully the person will come down on that exorbitant cost, because why is it doesn't matter. But be informed, know what it is about, and vote on it, and or go to the meetings to find out about it.
Right. If you aren't willing to, this is part of the taking stock in your personal development and your growth. If you are just going to complain all day and not do anything about that, good example, I'm not informed well enough on the thing that's going on with the sports field and the land there. But I'm not going to go and complain too much about it.
I also read it. If you're not going to take the time to actually read it and just are going to read the Facebook comments and why people think this. Right. Or my biggest thing is people will complain, and it's human nature. You see it even on all news sites. The biggest stories are the ones that are the most contentious. Like, you're going to have that opinion. I lost my train of thought as I was thinking it just now. Where was I going with this? come up with an alternative. Don't
Yeah.
sit and complain about something, but not have something constructive to fix.
Yeah, no.
That's my biggest complaint with certain things. You know, you look at, like, I don't know, I see Channel 7 and all these happy-go-lucky stories, but then you get to that one contentious one and there's 1,000 comments and 1,000 likes. But then you look at the ones that were really good feel-good stories and it's a good thing and it maybe has 2 likes and it didn't get pushed and it's not talked about. But don't just complain in the comment section. What do you have to be an alternative?
Yeah.
You know, if you can't change it, how can you be the good? How can you affect change? And what we also have to remember, and it's hard for us as humans, especially now with a 7-second attention span, is community level change takes 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
So things that I start now, and this is what I learned in coalition building and with, you know, working in prevention, is things that I put into place now, I might not see that seed sown until years and years and years later. And that's why we follow and watch and continuously have data on and you know, do surveys and things so that we can watch how that might evolve and change. It's not instantaneous. Some things are, absolutely. But community level change, you know, and right now people might think putting your pronouns in your bio, or you're saying, starting with, you know, I'm Cassie and I use he, you know, she, her pronouns is a hokey thing to say. In 10 years, that might just be the norm. And it's everyone saying and doing. Things didn't start that way. You know, even how we've changed in attitudes towards LGBTQ, it didn't come over time. Hell, women couldn't have a credit card until the 70s. Like, things take time and change. But to us, that's just always been an inherent right, and it's something that we've had, and it should be instantaneous. Things take time to change, too. So we've got to allow that seed to sow. We've got to allow that time to propagate and to see if things happen without damaging and changing and breaking things in the meantime, or expecting instant gratification.
Yeah. Do you find that on the local level that people still think that it's just, you should be able to exact change immediately?
Yes.
Because I mean, you are in a pretty conservative county.
Yeah.
So I could understand the frustration for being in an opposite, I guess, majority county and feeling like we're not getting some of the things that we think we should be moving towards.
Well, I'll give you an example. So when I started prevention work, one of the first things I wanted to do was promote naloxone and Narcan training. We worked with ACR Health, which is a really great group who do things above and beyond for the people of this area. And Narcan and naloxone, when we had 5 trainings in a day. We maybe had 15 people total, but my comment section of those posts were terrible.
No kidding.
Let people die. If you're a drug addict, you're a drug addict. You deserve to die.
That's terrible.
The things that were written were awful. We didn't train that many folks that day, and it was awful. But now, as we've moved, 7-8 years into this, I can have a conversation. Like, one of my last years of doing prevention training, I trained 80 staff members at Beaver River, and probably that number at South Louis. People who have all sorts of views, different ends of things, because they recognize that this was one way, because you can't treat someone with an addiction problem if they're dead. So me giving them naloxone allows them to live another day and maybe change their mind and change an attitude and change a heart and mind. Then you're getting them to that next step. You're getting them that handhold and you're taking them to maybe the next level. So it went from everybody deserves to die 7 years ago. If you're taking drugs, that's a you problem, to now here's a community level change where people saw the value in having this, because a kid could accidentally take something, or my grandmother at one point was on so many different drugs. She didn't know what she was taking at the end of life. She's got all these different things, and it doesn't matter what the pill case says. To her, it might have been midnight, and she's taking an extra dose. So it's looking at things nuanced and looking at things differently, that it's not just affecting the addict. It can be a family and a social problem. But now a whole group of folks had open hearts and open minds and said, you know what? Let's protect them. This training might change and save someone's life.
Right.
So that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge change.
There's so much of that's old school thinking. And I would argue that one of the biggest problems, in my view, that conservatives, or I guess people on the right, Republicans, whatever you want to say, is that closed-mindedness, because I don't partake in this, which means it's wrong, which means that you've got to figure out your own problem. And it's so, you're just missing the forest for the trees. You're missing the person there.
Yeah.
And the truth about especially addiction and all of these issues that people have is, it's a lot of times it's a generational thing. It's born by abuse. It's born by a lot of different reasons. Like, do you know what's the number? I saw recently some data on abusers who were themselves abused when they were kids, and it's like,
it's huge.
Hello,
yeah. People with
go.
ACEs, those are adverse childhood trauma, and ACEs at a high ACE score, you're probably going to have that have a predisposition towards alcohol or abuse. And it's an interesting ACEs. It's interesting to see, and then it's generational. And we're even finding that it's in the genes.
Sure.
My husband's parents were big alcoholics, big drinkers. It was socially acceptable and normal, and then it got out of control. I wouldn't say that my husband has a problem, but he knows. And we tell our daughter, who's 11, hey, your family history is one of predisposition, that one alcoholic drink could change you as a person. So we're not telling you not to, but we want you to be aware of all of the facts and all of the things that could happen, because genetically, you might not be able to put that drink down. And that's just knowledge. That's just, opening our minds. We just thought that the alcoholic there's something wrong with them morally and fiberly. And it's not that way. There's actually stuff in the brain science is it really is something else. Not to completely absolve them of their life choices, but it's a little bit of both.
Sure. Obviously there's always an initial choice, but there's influences to that as well. But the brain chemistry also is altered under, pretty much any kind of foreign substance. It's going to do something to your brain. There's a reason why things are so addictive. And it's not because they just keep wanting to do it. Sometimes it's because they feel...
This is addictive. This, your phone is addictive.
Yes,
everything can be addictive.
Yeah. So be mindful of that. Yep. And maybe that's a better approach.
I would say there's even the poverty level. No one can, we sell this thought of the American dream that if you just work hard enough and if you just do things the right way and you move through this, you're going to be a millionaire. It's not going to happen for most of us. We can make a comfortable living. We can do well. We can go to college. That's what we were sold in the 90s is everybody had to go to college.
Yeah. Even actually all the way up until
massive debt.
Yeah.
I remember I was fifth in my class and smart. But we're little pond, big fish. It's easy to do it then. Yeah. But I remember my guidance counselor, I really loved electricity. And because I worked with my grandfather from when I was probably yay high and watching him wire entire houses, and it came easy to me. Yeah. Okay. And so he did all of the work in some of our houses, and watching my dad and my grandfather work together, and it just came naturally. And I was like, I'm really good at this. This is kind of fun. How do I went to my guidance counselor and I was like, hey, how do I do this? And he was like, you're not going to do this. You're going to college. You're the fifth in your class, because it was just this negative view towards trades at that point.
Right.
So it's great to see a resurgence of trade and that too, but it shouldn't be. But also, on the same point, if you're a smart kid who wants to get education, that shouldn't be limited to you either. Seems like some of the most influential wealthy folks are like, oh, you just need to not go to college at all. We're going to make college inaccessible. They're not sending their kids to trade school. Their kids are going to Harvard. So we also have to look at both sides of that. But there are things that are never going to be necessarily as easy to reach if you're a child in inner Harlem versus, a child here who has different abilities and different aspirations and hopes and can move forward. It's just not going to happen. And we tend to just demonize the poor, and it's their fault that they are where they are, and they didn't hustle enough, and they didn't work hard enough, and they didn't have the 7 jobs and work themselves to the bone and work 80 hours. And if you're not working those, you're not good enough. And I don't think that that's fair. So
I think it was interesting. You made a point a little bit earlier about how it's not so much right left; it's more up down.
Yep.
And I think that sounds almost. I mean, I'm sure that it's in circles on the left too, but like the right would also say that. Like,
class consciousness, baby.
Yeah,
that's where we're
do
headed. Like, we have got to be conscious of the fact that we're all being held down.
Yeah.
There's a boot to everybody's neck, whether it would, no matter what. It's just that they like to pin us against each other so that we have someone else to blame.
And I wonder too, because you mentioned about like the corporate interest in the state-run media, kind of, you know. It's amazing how when there starts to be these collective movements, like Occupy Wall Street would be a good example, and then all of a sudden these culture war issues start to like just inundate you, and you're like, what? And then all of a sudden we're all fighting amongst each other, and the elite class is like, good.
It's intentional.
Yeah.
It's 100% intentional because they can keep you down and keep you hungry and keep you fighting amongst each other. If you're fighting for scraps against that black man over here because somehow you think that you're above that, if we can keep that fighting going on, then you're not fighting me as I take your entire everything.
Yeah.
From
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's all shiny
taking
thing.
away. Like, I don't know, moving from pensions to now you get everything in your 401k, which is based on this up and down cycle, and you might lose everything, but you know what? That's the sorry for you. Like, we had people with really. Also, I kind of do blame the boomers. I don't want to be a boomer hater, but you started it. You did.
I did start it. I'm not a boomer hater either.
It seemed like they just pulled the ladder up from them. I was told that if I went to college and I did a good job and I worked and studied hard, that I would be able to afford a house and a picket fence and 4 kids, and and we just can't do that. I'm just on that cusp between Gen X and millennial. So I'm the analog person.
Is that what it's called?
Yes. I went to college right when Facebook was just becoming the weirdest thing, and MySpace was just a thing. You're like, MySpace, what is that?
We just talked about that
thing
recently.
ever.
What was his name? Tom?
Oh yeah. I miss Tom.
You're friend with Tom?
Tom was a great guy. Everybody was friends with Tom. You didn't have a choice. Tom was your
I
friend. You
had
couldn't
to
even
fact check
remove
me
him.
Last time we said that, because I think I said like Dave or something.
It's Tom. He's
Tom.
great. Everyone had a Tom.
Yeah.
But you were sold this dream that if you just worked that hard, that it would all come to you. And then I was 40 before I paid off my student loan, and struggled and worked, $26,000 a year in South Carolina because we didn't have unions. That was when I made first year teaching. Like, how does someone survive on that? How do we allow people who are working full time, doing things with our kids? That's how I feel about it now. You shouldn't be making $12. Well, now it's $15 an hour to teach our youth in Head Start or pre-K or any of those things. Like, it kills me because it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. What is the biggest argument that you see against raising the minimum wage? Do you think it's small businesses? Yep.
And being that I watched my parents struggle, they ran that and I worked for free. As you know, most family businesses, that does happen.
Happens a lot.
And I loved doing it for them. It was something that I loved being at their store, but they couldn't afford to hire someone and, pay health insurance and all the other things. So I'm a big proponent for some sort of basic level income and universal health care, because if we knew that you didn't have to worry about where your next meal was coming from and that you were safe, healthy, and happy, you can do anything. I always joke with my husband that if we won that $1 billion lottery that, you buy that ticket once in a blue moon type thing for, I would literally fund a basic level of income for every single person in Lewis County. So 27,000 folks live here, 28,000 folks live here. Give them all $5,000, whether you're 1 or whether you're 100. Everybody gets $5,000 per person per year. That if you're a family of 5, that's a decent level, because that allows you a basic comfort level to maybe take a chance, invest in something, open something up. This middle America part is missing again, and small businesses are really suffering from the tariffs to the just everything else that are happening to some folks. You can't make a living, and it's by the grace of everything that we'll see businesses start to fail even around here. Restaurants can't stay open if there's nobody to eat at them, and if we can't afford to eat there.
Which is it's kind of the unfortunate trickling of those kinds of ideas. Like, well, you raise my payroll, which I own a company. Payroll's our biggest expense by far.
Ooh, yeah.
And we pay our staff very well. But if your margins are razor thin already, and now you're having to, put 20% more on your payroll, either you jack up prices, which will limit your clientele because they won't afford to come and have a pizza for $40.
Yeah.
Then you don't have customers anymore. You are out of business pretty fast. So, oh man, I don't know. It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
I would think in areas like education or like there's some I would say as a society, we need to be like very serious about funding them well. Law enforcement's another one. I still feel about that. Some of the paychecks that these guys are working it's crazy. Like, and you're working nights and you forget about it. And what's so important to a society? Safety. Okay. Education.
Safety and education.
Okay. Those are some pretty big things.
Those are the things that we're cutting.
Maybe we should fund those.
Yeah.
Maybe
we should stop letting the Pentagon fail their 7th audit in a row and their $1 trillion and triple $1 trillion.
These are populist ideas. This is not like right left.
No, exactly. You and I are having a conversation and agreeing exactly with it because we know maybe we shouldn't be sinking all this money into the defense system that isn't doing anything for us, or giving other countries billions of dollars necessarily when we're not getting anything out of it, and use that funding towards, I don't know, making sure we have doctors. Yep. And making sure that, because that's expensive to go to medical school. And now that we've done certain things with student loans, you have a cap on how much you can borrow a lifetime. And that's awful because as a doctor, you've got to be able to borrow so that you can go to school. We've got brilliant kids here in Lewis County who, just because they grew up here and don't have a high socioeconomic a standard of living, won't be able to afford that medical school that they should be able to afford, that should be open to anyone. And just because you come from a wealthy family doesn't mean you have brains. So why are we allowing that person to do surgery on my brain? Like
AI is going to do all that. Don't you know? That just came out recently where they said that in the next 5 years that AI is going to be able to be better at surgery than we are. Terrifying.
That is absolutely terrifying.
It's
no
crazy.
Offense, but then are we even going to be around to drink any of the water that they've ruined because of AI? Like, it takes gallons and gallons of water for that to happen.
You mentioned before kind of about how you expand your horizons and you understand where things are going, and you can almost seem to see the map playbook for what you'd like the future to look like, and then the pendulum starts to swing.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay, so we're just basically doing this all the time. We're pendulum swinging all the time.
Saw it in education when I was teaching. Same thing. There was just a different pendulum. It'd be from, we're going to teach this to this or this standard. And as much as I love a good data point, and I do, I do love a good data point, we took the creativity and the arts and the good stuff and the reading. We made reading a prescriptive, follow this and everybody will read. Well, you're not taking into account that my child has dyslexia and she sees things completely different than I do. And I had to deal with that with my own child. I am an avid reader, and for her to hate reading, and it's because she didn't see the way that I saw. Things are jumping around on paper for her. Yeah. And so it was interesting that here I was like, you're just not trying hard enough. Really? I was guilty of a boomer type thing, right? They're just not trying hard enough at reading. No, she cannot see that she thinks things different.
We love
boomers. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, if you're watching or listening. I'm really sorry.
I think most political it seems like most political movements are just pendulum swings of something else, and we just can't pin down the one thing that's like, okay, guys, here's what we need to do. Toward the end of the episode, I want to read you. Somebody put into AI, if you ran the United States.
If AI runs it?
No, it was just AI's like prescription for the best,
how we get it best,
optimal America. And I'm going to read it to you. It's a few slides and see what you agree with and what you don't agree with.
I am interested to hear this. I'm not going to lie.
Like you can say what you want about Trump. He was definitely a pendulum swing to something. Because he's in a lot of ways a wrecking ball. It's
definitely a mirror to our morality. It's to see, like, I mean, and again, this is going into the class part of things. People who have that exorbitant amount of money look at things completely different than we do. We are no more than a fly to them, or a speck of an ant. And what do they say about the ants coming over the cricket or the grasshoppers? The grasshoppers need the ants a lot more. If you ever watched that movie, what is it? A Bug's Life.
A Bug's Life.
A Bug's Life.
I was going to say ants because that's also a movie, right?
Yes, it is. Ants with a Z. a bug's life, but there are more ants than there are grasshoppers, and when they start to realize that, then we're in trouble, and we won't be able to take their crops.
Sure.
It's that kind of feeling. We are ants to them. We don't have the same level. So for me, the Epstein files are a big deal. What is done to those folks, men and women, boys and girls, young folks and their lives, like, it is an atrocious thing, and I don't think we've even touched 1% of the documents that are out there.
Which, again, not a right left
not
thing.
a right or left thing. Because there's a lot of people who are mad, and should be, rightfully so, that that people were just so taken advantage of and treated horrendously, and that it was allowed to happen. And I don't care if you're Bill Clinton or Donald Trump, you both deserve something if you're a part of that.
Yeah, it should all be brought to light.
100%.
And transparency.
See, we agree on something.
Yeah, we agree. Like, it's I think that anybody who is coming along and saying their candidate is like the perfect candidate, this is who we want. It's like, you have to be able to, in our two-party system, which is a mess.
It is.
I hate the fact that people are voting the lesser of two evils. I hate that.
I do too.
How often do you hear that?
A lot. I mean, and it was.
How do we fix that?
How do we fix that? I don't know if you do. If you only have a two-party system, you have to allow other voices and other people at the table. One thing that I've always said, and I still say, is nothing about us without us. Why are we having conversations about XYZ if you don't have someone who's a part of that coalition? Which is why I think that, as we embrace and look at and change, that we can bring in different perspectives. We have to be willing to listen. We can't be quick to cancel everyone. I mean, obviously, if you're just a villain, you're a villain, and if you have no morality, you're not going to have morality, but you have to be willing to listen and accept all those different viewpoints and listen and really, that's the only way I can think of, is this two-party system has got to go. No other country has two parties like we do, which is probably why we're having the issues that we are. George Washington didn't want two-party system. He was an advocate for this to never happen. It shouldn't be one or the other. You should have choice. And then there wouldn't be lesser of two evils. You'd have a gamut and a line of different folks. And also we have to not only hold people accountable, but hold them to what they say. Too often, I don't think they're honest and transparent and open. You have to take dark money and big money out of everything. I really want to run for office, but do you know that it costs like at least $150,000 minimum to run for New York State Senate? That's minimum. Now, are there ways that New York has worked, like allowing for match funding to happen? Absolutely, and we can get onto that a different time because I don't think we have time to handle that today. But it's at least trying to even out things. There shouldn't be PAC money. They shouldn't be held accountable to those things. I want to run for office, but it seems so huge because I don't have $150,000 just chilling in a bank account. I'd love that if I did.
Even if you did, was that what you spend it on?
No, no, I would not.
Exactly.
But
so
I
then you start to get in, where's that money coming from? And is there pay to play kind of nonsense?
Exactly.
And I think that no matter what.
And then you lose some of your humanity. You lose some of your vision because you're tied to a money and so what somebody else wants or what a lobbyist wants. So if you're going to do it the way I think was ideal and not take money from anybody else but maybe the small donors, you're accountable to your folks differently. So getting rid of the money issue, having, it would be great if we almost treated our politics like we do jury duty. Everyone's got to do it. Everyone's got to try it, and they're going to have to serve, because that's what it was supposed to be. I feel like that's what Washington wanted. Yep. You were supposed to be a farmer in the field. You're supposed to serve your time, and then you go back to the field. It shouldn't be a 70-year career. Like Strom Thurmond, I think, was in Congress for a million years. He was like 90-some-odd years old, or Mitch McConnell now. He's barely making it.
All of them.
Being held on to. Right. We don't need octogenarians.
Who are all worth what?
Yeah, because they can trade on the side and then they think they need a raise.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is the set amount of money. Maybe this is what your job would have been and this is what you're going to get. And you're all going to have to serve. Here's your 2-year time. And then you go back and you do whatever you were doing before. And it's almost like jury duty and you have to do it. And maybe that would help take in that civic duty, and you're not beholden to anyone but your constituents. Like, I would love to run to office because I want this area to succeed. And when you've got such a state like New York, where it's so varied and so many different viewpoints, the North Country voice gets lost.
Yeah.
And there are things that are really good about here that you want to be able to tout, and things aren't going to work. Like, I don't know, electric vehicles on all our buses. How is that going to work when it's negative 30 degrees? There are things
You're
that have
making way
to be
too much sense.
figured out.
You got to have black and white
right?
feelings.
There's got to be a way to figure this out or
Yeah.
rule things in differently. Do I think we should be dependent on gas? And is there a place for natural gas? I love my natural gas heater, and I don't want to see that go away.
You can't say
You know
that.
what I mean?
You're canceled. That's it.
I know, that's it. I'm
You're
over.
done.
I can't be chair anymore. I like it, but also I'm very open to all the great stuff that solar and we've been using water power forever. Why can't we figure out different ways? Why did somebody way back in the 70s come up with this way that we can run an engine on Coca-Cola, and that somebody bought the patent, and now we can't use that ever because it's being held somewhere?
Yeah.
Those things happen.
Things happen.
Why
to
can't we
people.
work on our own farm equipment or our own cars? I love Tyro. I'm going to shout out Tyro.
Yeah, shout them
You know,
out.
I'm going to shout them out. I do. We love them. My husband
Yeah.
brings them donuts every time they fix their car.
good.
But because I can't fix my own car, but I want to be able to have that freedom that they
Yeah.
can fix it without having to go to a licensed dealership and pay $8,000 billion.
For a battery, you know, for
like a little battery in my
I know.
like
Well,
that.
these are common sense positions, and you have to be able to take the red blue out of things and start looking at things and be like, okay, what's going to be best? What's a rational position on this?
Best for our folks.
Oh my
and
goodness!
what is going to help us all do better together?
Did Governor Hochul just announce something about nuclear?
Yeah, that is something that is still being
Interesting. Interesting position.
It's funny because one of the episodes I listened to recently was something that you guys were talking about,
With nuclear
power.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough of the subject to know either way.
Me neither.
Except
Me neither.
that I see pros and cons to both, and I think there's safer ways than there were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when this was first being developed. Am I super psyched to live next to a power plant? Not necessarily, but like,
right.
I think here in the town of Gregg, they wanted to put in a battery station, and there's a lot of waste, and that could ruin some beautiful land and leach into our water system. And I just want to protect and keep the Adirondacks the way that they are. I don't love all the solar stuff
I was going to
on
ask you
some
about
of
that.
those farmlands.
Yeah, me too.
Because I also don't like the way they were set up. At least the windmills, like when they leave, they have to take all that with them, and they have to clean up, and they have to do all of this stuff.
See, I didn't know
and
that.
So there is something in the legislation that they have to clean up their mess. So when their lease is
or
up,
at
they're
least
going to
pick it
have
up
to
and go and bury it somewhere else.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something with it,
Right.
and they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do. But it's that leave no trace kind of thing that we're told when we go hiking or camping. Your idea is not to leave that mess, and that's not necessarily true of the solar. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's not true. They can leave all of that stuff, and we don't know the long-term ramifications. Do I think there are things that are good that can work? Absolutely. And we need to use those others. And I want to move towards that world, but you can't, again, expect change within instantaneous. It's going to take 8 to 10 to 20, 30, 40 years for us to make some changes.
Well, that was the biggest pushback from the Green New Deal, right?
Yeah.
Was like, okay, we can't just do this right away.
There were some good things, but we can't
You're
just
gonna bankrupt
say,
our economy for it?
Yeah,
Was it
exactly.
$12 trillion? Was it? Like there has to be like a sustainability model towards that stuff that makes sense, and we're not just gonna bankrupt the whole country.
Right, we don't want to rip funding away from things, and we want to build towards and see how things progress. But again, as a nation, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to hold our instant gratification and work towards something together, or is greed kind of overtaking that too? Because are we beholden to the land or our shareholders? And what is viable? And I don't necessarily think that we have the billionaires or the millionaires of the past who, wanted to build a Carnegie Hall and wanted to leave a good thing. We've got people who just wanted to keep that for themselves instead of actually fixing and changing and doing. And again, class consciousness.
It's a large scale too. We're talking about, number one, there's implications when you're the world power.
Yeah.
You have to be strong for those reasons. If you want to continue interest, that's fine. But then there's all of these different ways that everybody thinks should be done. And my opinion is, well, then you decentralize it from the top to New York State, then to the counties, and then a little bit more that way. It's kind of a hard balance, right?
It is, because even within the state, it's insane.
Right. So how do you expect the federal government to come in and know what's best for Lewis County? I don't. Right. And so I guess my question is, do we put too much focus from if we're conscious about our local area, too much spotlighting on the national
Yes. Short answer,
apparatus?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We do put too much on the national. I think even this current administration has made several states, several people think and step back and go, why do we have the federal government at this point? To be honest with you, I think a lot of people.
In what way?
I would say that they're wondering what the point is of New York State pays out more in taxes than it and gives more to than it takes in, and it receives back in benefits
Into others, to the
to
federal
other
government?
states. So yes, into the federal government. California is the same way. They pay more in federal taxes and give out so that other states like Mississippi and other red states, they take more in than they give. So, it's how I hated in taxes in general. When I was single and didn't have a family and any kids, I didn't have that little tax deduction running out. And so I always felt as a single person, we were like hurt the most because we were paying the most. And then it was like, yay, have a tax deduction. Now
When you have kids.
yay, now I have a little tax deduction running around. And that's nice. And then I get that money back. Or people who have like trillion kids and you're like, that's not fair. Why are they getting more than they ever paid in?
Like Tyson. He has 6.
And well, bless him. I have one and that's enough. That is so much more enough. But it's also but doesn't that breed animosity even among people? We might start to go, well, that person didn't even pay and they went and stayed on welfare all year and they have 7 kids and look at them going on vacation with their $8 million. I was one of those people. I felt that way. And so I think we've got a lot of people now questioning what is the reason for, aside from, I know when in that same episode you talked about air travel and defense and other things. And those are all viable, but as a state, I think some people are sitting back and going, if we're paying all of this in, what's the point? Why? Me as a person, why am I paying federal income tax if half of it's going to other countries?
Right.
And or the Defense Department.
Right.
And isn't going towards programs that I'd like to see, like SNAP, and making sure all of our neighbors are fed. So I think we're feeling it on both levels.
Do you think that there would ever be, with the heightened polarization of everything, do you think that there would ever be something in the form of what D.O.G.E was doing that both sides could agree with transparency, that would actually have teeth to cut funding that's being used fraudulently or is being wasted? Do you think we could even get to that place, is what I mean? Like, even if we had 2 really good actors, one on each side, and they're like, okay, guys, this spending's out of control. We have to start cutting it. We have to start getting the budget in alignment. I feel like all of the cogs of the machine would start working against that again.
I think so. I did not like the way any of that was done. The premise behind is right. The idea of finding where those wasteful things are is right.
Yep.
The person that you had in charge of it and who did what they did was for the wrong reasons.
You mean
it
just
was
coming
not
in
done.
blanket statement, kind of handling things one case. Like you're talking about coming in and just like wiping the whole thing and being like, yeah. Versus,
how did breaking everything
let's
really
identify
help
the problems
everything?
here and then address that.
100%.
Do you think that the nature of the current administration is almost that even if something was done well, it wouldn't get any praise, or
I would love to praise him.
Exactly.
Give me something to praise him for.
Good.
I would love to have a reason to eat my own hat and to like him a little bit better.
Okay.
And I could happily give that.
Yeah.
I could happily be like, you know what? Applaud. I did in the first administration. There were several things that I was like, you know what? That's actually a good idea, and that seems to be working. But right now we have a Congress that isn't even doing what they should be doing. It's one of the most ineffective Congresses that we've had in our 250 year of being a Congress. They have done nothing. They have passed nothing. They have not helped a single soul, and they've taken. Do I think that government at its way that it is where it should be? Absolutely not. There's tons of ways. I think of PPP loans or the PPE loans that were done during COVID. There were people in Congress who applied for and got them forgiven. And then my parents had a small business and they didn't want to take because they were just fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that difference in morale. People took and had them forgiven. And then there were people like my parents who probably could have done something with that, who could have made a difference, who could have, you know, boosted up their small business.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we're not going to take from that because I don't know what their reasoning was, or they didn't feel like they needed it. And I was like, it's probably going to get forgiven. But in their minds, that was just not the way to do it. So those kinds of programs and things like that, is there that at every level? Absolutely. Should we go in and just take things absolutely apart and break it before we try and fix it back? It's that same thing we talked about earlier. You can't take away from a system but not replace it first, or have a scaffolding for how we're going to make this better. Mm-hmm. So I would love to see certain things done. But I think we also need to... We're losing institutional knowledge, as much as I don't want to give them credit. They you know, boomers had a lot. Here we go again. They had a lot of good things to do, and they have institutional knowledge. And then when they leave or up and leave, they leave a hole. And there's things that you and I don't know, or that the younger generations under us don't know, that you're kind of leaving this gap in, and things. Did I think it was bloated? Absolutely. It's bloated at the state level. I wouldn't say at the
you mean USAID?
Level. No, in general, just
right.
everything at once. I can't speak just for them. I just know that there were some really good programs that helped not only humanitarily, but helped our status in the world, that we weren't this evil person or this evil entity, which right now we look pretty evil to a lot of different folks, which is unfortunate because we could be fostering communication and commitments and help between nations instead of shooting off at the mouth and saying things like Greenland should be the 51st state. That's not okay. Like, you're not helping the situation.
I think most of the time it would be great to see a coalition come forward and say, all right, our budget isn't working. Oh. And guess who's hurting? The lower and middle classes are what's hurting from this. I heard a quote one time about, I don't know if it was hyperinflation or unemployment, but it was basically like when the elite class, the rich class gets the cold, the lower class and middle class die of pneumonia and flu. So I don't know. I just think that if we could have some coalition that says, guys, look, the bottom is really hurting, and how can we get rid of some of this spending, build up our infrastructure, talk about healthcare, talk about some of these other things, and move forward that way. Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of America I honestly think 99% of Americans.
I think it's where we all love to live.
So why isn't that the message?
I don't know. Because it's not popular, and it's going to take a long time.
Maybe when you run, that can be your message. It's going to take a long
time to fix, and it's not popular at this moment, because it's going to take rolling up our sleeves, facing some things that we don't want to, that we talked about very early in this episode, facing some cold hard truths about ourselves, and maybe making some humility instead of leading with emotion.
Yeah.
And making some concessions. I think that's what government was meant to be, right? And it is that at the local level sometimes. It's
probably better at the local level than definitely all the way up through it. You start to lose that once special interests get involved.
We're seeing one part of it too, because we're seeing the part that they're getting their sound bites and they're getting in front of people, but we're not seeing what behind closed doors. They're all shaking hands and laughing at us, because they're making a really nice paycheck to sit in for 82 days a year. Are
there people in, let's say, the U.S. Senate and U.S. Congress that you think could be those people? Does anybody stick out where you're like, that person's actually here for the right reasons? Maybe they're not too tied down yet to
So he's not federal, but the things that Mamdani has to say, his messaging was on point. He really, truly, from his heart, cares about each and every person in New York City. You can feel that in every speech. Everything he said, people would try and throw him off and ask him a question about Israel, or if he's going to go and say if he's going to do this, and his message, how many parades he was going to be in. And his messaging was always affordability and the people of New York, and what can we do to better their life, and can we make buses free, and can we have, government-led grocery stores that are tied to that. And these are all great ideas. And now he can't run for president, but he could be a congressperson eventually and things like that. AOC, Bernie Sanders. I would even say the Adam Kissingers. There are other folks that I think have really good ideas.
Name some on the right.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. Right now, it's really hard because they've just taken a different line, and they're going to hold a line, and they're not they have been taught since the Mitch McConnell age, you don't give in even when you're in charge. You don't make concessions, and that's not how this is supposed to be run. This is not how we're supposed to be doing government. So I am having a hard time finding someone that stands out to me that would be like, oh, no, I lied to you, Thomas Massey. You know, seeing how he and Ro Khanna have been working together, and people who are passing things, that's the Epstein bill, guys. You know, they were really great about getting that passed and working together. And no one's going to be the perfect, infallible person. You know, I look at Gavin Newsom, and he's such a jerk in some ways, but other ways he's just... You gotta love the guy because at least, you know, he's running a great state, whether you agree or not. They're making a bank and they're doing a good job. I don't like that we're seeing New York is wonderful, but we've got such a flux of people leaving the state. So
Same
why is that happening? Yeah, why is this happening? I think we're second in the nation with people leaving the state. What is happening that we can't keep folks here? And who are we losing? It's not billionaires. It's, you know, New York City isn't going to bleed billionaires. They're not going to leave the city. Who's leaving? It's mostly middle class because they can't afford the taxes. They can't afford to start a business as much as they want to live and work and be here. They just can't make it work.
And that's you don't see the same trend in California?
I think it's higher if I remember. I think California might be leading in exodus from the state if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that.
But you still like Newsom?
I don't love him, but you got to give it to the guy that he's
charismatic.
He's charismatic. He does have a way with that I think appeals to and puts a certain way of a mirror up to the right, because if you're going to allow Trump to get away with the things and then Gavin does the same thing, you don't really have a leg to stand on. You know, I've heard a lot of people complain about him, but that's the same thing verbatim, even to the thank you for the attention to this matter at the end of a quote. Do I think it's petty? Yes. Do I like that? No. I would like to see people just maybe work together on things. But we don't know that state, and I don't know enough to say it. You know, I'm a Democrat through and through, but I'm not a Kathy Hochul stan. There are things that I know up here do not work for us. So you have to look at things holistically and together. And so if we could find those people who are charismatic, caring, and aren't tied to special interests, which that's key at the federal level. Right. You know, I don't know how much you know of our current race that's coming up for the New York 21 district. Stefanik is done, which means there's a big hole. I'm not sure who's running for the Republicans. I think it might be Dan Stack. Or Stack, is that it? Don't quote me on it. I haven't paid attention to that side. But there are several folks that are running on the Democratic line right now, one of them being Blake Jindabine. He is a St. Lawrence County farmer. He has a dairy farm. You know what I mean? Like, he speaks to our folks, and we've had a couple of meet and greets here, and we're going to have more with him coming into the area and we've had them filled. That's the thing. I have had more Republicans at my Democratic fundraisers, and it doesn't run the other way. Like, that doesn't happen that way. I had folks that came to our fundraising dinner.
You mean Democrats don't go to
Republican
Why do you think
dinners.
That is?
Are they welcome? I don't know. I can't say, because again, I'm telling a story in my head that seems to me. Right. Would they be? I don't know. And is it congenial? Whereas some folks, I would say, are so fed up what they see with this ultra Trumpism, MAGA part of things that they don't want to associate with that. Right. And so we've had massive numbers of people change their parties this year. I would say 300 to 400, 500 people in Lewis County have changed parties. That's big. Even if it's just not Republican to Democrat, but Republican to independent or independent to Democrat, that is a huge difference in our numbers. So I don't know.
It's hard to know. It's hard to know what would be driving that, you know.
I would love to know.
Especially on the fringes, like, because the truth is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and 100%. That's all you see online. So I very much try when I'm when those things are filling up my algorithm for whatever reason, and there's some city burning somewhere, like, you could see how people would feel a certain way about that. Mm-hmm. and not want to be associated with that. And the same is true in the other way. Like the same is true in the opposite, in the aggregate.
But I think we have to do our research. We have to look at things individually. We have to look at our candidates. We have to hold them to a standard. We have to see where their money is coming from, and then hold them to account when it's an election year. And realize that, a stump speech isn't going to do it. What results do you have? I think Blake is an excellent candidate. I think I have a lot of respect for him. I know him on a personal level, him and his wife, Carmen. And if in, 6 years or 4? I don't remember for Stefanik's spot. If in 4 years, if he gets it and he comes back to us and he's done nothing, I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. And that's part of that, is holding that accountability. If there's not accountability at the end, what is the point to?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
And I feel like that should be for anyone. From our county legislatures or our town clerks all the way up to president. Where's the accountability? What change actually did foster and happen?
I like what you said early on, because you talked a little bit about intention, and it's very hard to not assume negative intent. It's like the hardest thing to do.
It's so hard.
And one of the things you said was that you don't think President Trump is an evil man. And I would say that many people on the right look at people on the left and would say the opposite. Mamdani would be a great example. Oh, well, he's a socialist, radical, this. Well, maybe his intentions are good. Let's see how the policies work.
Right.
Hello. And the best part about local and state and city governments is it's kind of like a small little microcosm of, hey, let's see if maybe some of these things can work. And then, you can start to scale it out. And if they do, great. And if they don't, move on, do the next thing.
There's a saying that as New York goes, so goes the country. And so watching this happen and to see if some policies are good, because we have socialism all the time. We just don't call it that. We have that. I mean, what do you think of buses? Like there's certain things that are socialistic in nature. We just don't say, oh, that's a socialist program.
And scale would matter too.
Absolutely. And things are going to work differently in New York City versus rural Alabama, or rural upstate New York. We don't have the infrastructure. Or we don't, and people are always talking about like Europe and how developed that is. Yes, 100%. But they have free accessible rail cars, and they have this much space, between, you can do 2 hours on a train,
Yeah, you're in a different country.
And you're in Spain, and you're like, yay. But here it's 2 hours and I'm still in Lewis County. Like,
you're
barely out of the county. Like, great.
Right, yeah.
So, there are things can we make things accessible? I think we have to be much more focused on a future and looking for options and solutions instead of saying why we can't do something.
Right.
That's one of the phrases I abhor. I can't stand the phrase also, like, that's the way it's always been done.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot stand that phrase. We hear it a lot at local government level.
I think the newer generations.
Oh, I can't stand that.
I don't think that's what they don't look at that and be like, well, what do you mean that's the way it's always been? What if we can do it a better way?
Right.
And you hear that from employers as well. Because the millennials, like everybody was dogging on millennials for a long time. 100%. And then same with the more recent generations. But I've heard many like high-level entrepreneurs talk about the way millennials think, even in the military, sometimes even in the military. And they're like, they see things different. And sometimes it's just an explanation that they need, or they see a better way to do it. And they get past that old guard of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Or if it breaks, that's just the way it's always been.
I loved teaching. I loved learning, because I learned more from the youth than I think I might have taught them sometimes.
Yeah, so your students teach you.
They taught me, and I love the fact that, and people give Gen X such a bad rap right now because they're like, why, they're like, oh, you need to be working all this time and you need to have 3 jobs. And they're like, why? It doesn't change anything. And I'm like, you know what? Why indeed? Why don't we have a 3-day workday or things like that? Or, I was seeing somebody wrote something the other day on Facebook, and they were talking about how mental health, Hochul just passed something about mental health funding and not cutting it and making sure that this is, and they're like, well, back in my day, we didn't care about people's feelings so much. I'm like, that didn't make it better. You still had massive amounts of suicide, and you still had massive amounts of alcoholism and using and turning towards other substances. You just didn't acknowledge or see it as much, or you lobotomize people instead, and you just left them in a home or institutionalized them. You just didn't take it into account. It doesn't make your trauma or what you face doesn't mean that they should feel less than or want more for themselves. I'd love a 3-day work week or a 4-day work week. I do more in 2 hours than I can sitting for 8 hours at something. I don't know. We're getting all completely off topic. So I think we should I want to hear this AI thing. Honestly.
Okay. Yeah.
I do.
Okay. Well, I have 2 more things, and then we'll start to get you out of here. But one of the things that I wanted to have you on for was because of the No Kings rally.
Yeah.
I went through the No Kings rally. I drove through. I wasn't one that gave you the finger or whatever. Okay, I wasn't.
Thank you. You were the respectful one that didn't throw candy at me at the fair, so I appreciate that.
Yes. Although I was disappointed to not see you the year before when it was flooding because we moved back that year, and we were really looking forward to the parade that year. But
yeah. I was actually proud that we didn't. I know, and that's a weird thing that I was like, ugh. But this year, because we've done it more, and because we've been out, and because we've been vocal, and we've been seen, I think it really does help folks. But what did you want to know about the No Kings?
Basically, what was the? I know that was a national thing. What was the? Just so you can get out, kind of your side of it. What was the basis and the baseline for that?
So it's been several. We started with one. We started with the June one, and not a lot of people knew about the June No Kings rally here in Lewis County. We were in New Bremen at that little corner, and that's where we started, and we had a little protest. We had goats. You should have been there. It was great.
No way.
Yeah, we had goats.
Goats?
Protest goats, yes. 100%.
Nice.
They had signs and everything.
Changing policy one goat at a time.
Exactly. That's how we're going to make change, because people are like, oh, it's a protest. I hate those people. Oh, they have goats? Wow, that's amazing.
It's not a bad play around here.
It's not next time it'll be cows.
Yeah, right.
Next time I'll have a cow, a Liberty cow. So we had maybe a very few handful, like less than 20 people show up to that one. And then we moved from there to Veterans Park, where actually that's where the meat of that day was in June, because we had some speakers from JCC and local retired teachers who kind of shared some of the policies, because I think people get caught up on saying, oh, he's not a king or this kind of thing. But there are policies that are harmfully and actively ruining things for our folks and making lives harder for them here. We're seeing our ACA, the skyrocketing because of those ACA, the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Those subsidies are gone away, and we're seeing skyrocketing premiums, and people can't afford to eat. So how are they going to afford to go to the doctor or pay a premium? But these are all things we saw and we discussed. And because the more that you know, the more that you're informed, that you can look at actual policy and read law. People aren't trained to do that. It's boring. It sucks. Mm-hmm. I've had to write many a grant and read through the contracts. It is not fun. It's not fun to do. And so I don't even think half our legislatures read it. They just kind of go off the synopsis and say, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's sign off. Yeah. And they told you they didn't read the big, beautiful bill. Several of them voted for things and then said, oh, crap, I didn't know that was in there. That is not a way to govern. That is not how we should be rolling things in.
That's been happening
a million years. That's not just one party. That is every party.
Right.
Or, giving people a kickback.
The COVID bills were like that too. And it was like, 100%. What's in this? And then they 100%. Would press the guys on Capitol Hill and they'd be like, I don't actually know. Nobody's read it. We're just voting. It's like,
correct.
What?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
And that's been forever. Or adding a pork barrel something to that. That's been since the early 1800s. Like adding something at the end instead of and not keeping it a clean build. Like those are all things we can agree that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
So we had the first one. There were maybe 20 people, and we had donations and we gave to the food pantry. And then we had one in between for Veterans Day, and then Labor Day weekend. No, so it was before that. So Labor Day weekend was the big one for us. So we had 3, and from the last one, we had 150 people there. More visibility, and folks were singing and wanted. It was twofold to prove that yes, there are Democrats in Lewis County and people who care and are seeing things. And also being visible to hold up a mirror to folks and be like, you know what? this isn't good, and there are other folks that are not afraid to stand up and say so, and they live in a rural area, and not everyone that's rural is feeling the same way, and so that they kind of came. We had people coming from as far as Blue Mountain and other places. We had some from Oswego come and join us, and they felt just that togetherness, that we're all in this together. So it wasn't even about being seen and being like, oh yeah, we're going to stick it to Republicans. It had nothing to do with that. Actually, you were the furthest thing from our mind. It was about building community and building folks that have a place together, who are discontent with what they see, who on a human level are not happy and are not, are very scared and are nervous about things, and then wanted to get together to have some place to put that, because there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment, as I kind of said before, there's a lot of blame, and so you want to be able to rage or to protect your First Amendment right and share that with your folks. And there's a lot of community building within that, people who are making connections, who then can say, okay, we're going to do this fundraiser here, we're going to let's pool our resources, let's talk about what went well here. We would carpool and go from the one in Lowville to the one in Watertown. And, people are like, what's the point? The point is that we could gather, and that we still have that right to use our First Amendment and say that we don't like something's happening, and to be visible, and we don't have to worry about being shot in the face or not being able to stick up for our rights. Because when you allow things to happen and you just go along with and can't voice an opinion, that's where it's going to fall apart, all of it.
What's the relationship locally between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party? Is there any?
There is none.
Okay.
There is none. And a part of it is the way the systems are set up. So the Democratic Committee exists to find candidates to run for offices all locally within the county. Mm-hmm. And that is their only function. So we've kind of taken on the additional function of being visible and setting up community lines and also hosting things like this. That's not usually how an actual Democratic Committee in its true rarest form exists. Most of them are just there to find candidates, pass petitions, and then kind of do whatever. We're taking the additional step of adding the advocacy part in, and building community and coalitions, and bringing in people who might be on those fringes or who might be independents, and letting them know about things too. Okay. So there's an advocacy part that doesn't always happen.
Is it an intention in the future to try to find a coalition with the other side?
100%.
That would be great.
I don't think it's necessarily, again, it's not right or left, it's up, down. It's us trying to find ways, because I do believe that most of us here, we live here, we stay here, we fight a hell of a winter over it to live here. And because we love it, and we love our neighbors, regardless of what you are. Like I said, we go to every single, but I think, you have to have a little bit of both. Sure. Right now, it's all Republicans, and it's our job this year to fight as hard as we can to get other folks and other opinions and other viewpoints. We can't all be old white men sitting on a legislature. We have to have, which we're not. That was a generalization. There are others that are not old. Herb, I can think of Herb. He was in the Harrisville area. We have great legislatures. We have good things, but it needs to be varied, which is why I'm going to put the call to action that if you really do want to know more about how to run for office, that's what we do. That's what we try to do, is help people through that. We don't have a lot of money, but we can help, buy signs or make sure petitions are passed, or go door to door and knock doors and tell people about who you are, because that's the most efficient way in this county to get information out and about. We need people your age and younger running. And it's hard because you're having to work 17 jobs and care for kids, and it's too much. But we also just can't leave it to our older folks all the time who look at it one way, and this is the way it should be. We need that young voice. We need people of all ages running for office, all perspectives, all socioeconomical. That's one of the things that I think I love about Bridges Out of Poverty. It's a program that really does make you think outside of your own scope of your middle class American. You're thinking as it from how does this look from someone who's in poverty to try and navigate these same systems? Are you making it harder for them, or are you making it easier? Are you welcoming, or are you not? So taking in a perspective of someone who maybe doesn't have as much money, I was always quick to make sure that nothing about us without us, that youth were sitting at the table. How did they see things differently than we think that we should know everything about drug prevention? And DARE told us to stay off drugs, that everyone was going to, be offering you drugs on the corner. They see things completely differently. Let's make sure we're actually doing things that are going to help them. And so we need a varied group. I am calling to action. If you have been ever civically called, it's not a lot of money. It's not, you think it's $6,000 to be a legislature for a year. It's not a big money maker, but it's something that if you're called to and you really do love this county and you want to see the people here do better and live better and have better, get involved, or at least figure that out. Or maybe you just want to, have somewhere else to be in community with folks who think the same.
I think a lot of the No Kings Rally messaging was pretty much like you're sounding a lot like you're saying it's about community community getting out, talking with each other about things we're not happy about. And I guess my general view of what that looked like was a lot of the protests were succinctly calling President Trump a king and an authoritarian. Is that your sense?
I don't. I see it differently.
Yeah, it's probably our algorithms.
Yeah, again, you saw signs that said F Trump. We made sure that there was nothing. Our signs and our speeches had to do with policy and what was harmful to our folks.
Right.
We didn't have profanity. This didn't turn into a riot. There were no fires. We didn't light the Lions Club lovely little field on fire. You know what I mean? Like we didn't. There was no law enforcement even at ours because, well, it's Lewis County, but there could have been. I don't know. We didn't have those sort of issues. And I think the intent, for the most part, all of them were pretty darn peaceful, that people got to feel a certain way. And I don't think it was necessarily that we think that Trump is king, because no one is a king. It's more about these policies are actively harming our neighbors in one way or another, be it, the removal of DEI or the removal of the ACA subsidies. There's all things that are actively harming the folks around us and are making us weaker from within. And that was the takeaway that I took from it. So and I saw pictures, but the pictures I saw were uplifting, or you know what I mean. Like the pictures that the rally cries that I heard were not negative, but I'm sure there were angry, red-faced, blue-haired rebel pictures that you saw.
I like the idea of being able to call out our own side when we're acting a fool, when we're doing stuff. I also like the idea of pointing out policy over character. Yeah. Like, look, I didn't vote for President Biden, but I would never say, like, on a personal level that he had some kind of animus or something. I could disagree with policy and disagree with a bunch of different things. That's fine. That's exactly what you're doing, right now. And that's how it should be. When it starts to get into like this really divisive, scary kind of Trump is Hitler, kind of rhetoric, that's where I start to get a little get concerned.
Are you not concerned, or do you not see some of the authoritarian moves?
Well, that was my next question. Is President Trump an authoritarian?
Yes. We are already in an oligarchy authoritarian state regime at this point. From state-run media, if you look at the 7 stages of fascism, we're hitting every mark. And you might not see it that way, and that's where we're going to tend to disagree. But when the oligarchy and the rich are controlling everything, and there is no means for the common man to make a difference, it's moving towards that point. I point you towards some of the dog whistles that I've seen just recently this week on some of the homeland security things. Do I think that there needs to be stuff with immigration? 100%. But were thousands and millions of people crossing the border? No. This hyperbole of, I don't know, he changes the number every other minute. 2 million people crossed the border in this year. And now we're down to 0 people. Well, that's not factual. There are certain little things here and there that you got to go, no. Do I think that we're already in an authoritarian regime? Yes, because our Congress is probably the most ineffective, have made no stops to do anything. We overtook a foreign country that we have no business bombing boats that should not have been bombed in the middle of the Caribbean, and now threatening our allies in NATO to take over Greenland. It'll be interesting in 10 days from this countdown that Stephen Miller has put up on social media, be it truth or not, what we come back to and what we talk about, because we're headed in a direction. You can't threaten Mexico and Canada to become states and to do and say those things. There are repercussions across the world for doing what we're doing, and you can't, and suing everyone or trying to make sure that everybody falls in line and does exactly what you want. How is that not overreach and authoritarianism? From suing and taking away money from Harvard and other institutions so that you're only teaching a certain thing and don't mention these words. There's 150 words that I can't write in a grant anymore. One of them being like low income or rural or women or minorities or people of color. I can't use those phrases anymore if my stuff is going to get past the AI algorithm and get approved for a grant. Like, these are things, when you start to censor speech like that, that didn't happen when Biden was in office. It didn't. We didn't. And it's astounding that we are sitting and listening and saying these things and really pondering that, we're going to take, the Danish people were there today in Washington, D.C. And they came out of that meeting saying, he's serious. Like, we couldn't change his mind. He's going to take Greenland or something's going to happen from this. And this is from their own mouths. And again, I fact-checked several different places to go, is this really what happened? Because we're hearing a slice of it, or we're hearing their side of things, but they're genuinely worried that this could be the end of that era. And we can't do those things if put the shoe on the other foot. If Biden were sitting there telling you, we're going to make Greenland the 51st state and we're going to take it the way we would, you'd be pissed. You'd be angry. And you'd go, whoa, wait a minute. So are we there? Yeah, we're there. It's already happening.
I would think that, first of all, I can't get that. We mentioned like 18 topics right there. But
sorry, I am all over the place, but they're all kind of interlocked together, so they have to be mentioned.
Well, how about this? How about next time? Maybe another time we'll come on and we'll have a little bit more like outlined. Okay, let's talk about this and then this and this and this. That would be probably easier. But a lot of the stuff you just alluded to, I think, needs deep dives.
100%. And I am being very superficial and being and going from a fear book place. Yeah. But when we see these things, or when we hear from other nations, is when I'm concerned, because there is a decorum and there's a thing that's missing. Okay. And love him or hate him, he says what he wants.
That cannot be denied.
But it's not helpful. It is not helpful. Yeah.
I think
there has to
be. A
lot
of conservatives would agree with that.
Yeah, there has to be a level of decorum that we've lost, I'd say, in this last 10 years of dealing with this. I miss who I was before Trump, because I didn't care about this. I didn't know the Speaker of the House's name, or if I did, it was in passing. Hardly any of us ever really knew who the vice president was. Now I know cabinet members, and I don't want to. I don't. Yeah. It shouldn't be like that. It should be that we don't have to think about that because it's running so smoothly. Or did we become so complacent in things running that we just checked out?
Right. I think
it's both of those.
I think it's both.
It's both of those things.
Because I think that the right would probably say that's exactly what happened, and we just kind of went stalemate for a long time, and then we're like, actually, I have a problem with a bunch of this. Oh. And just the way that our system's designed, then you end up getting somebody who's coming in saying they're going to take a wrecking ball to a bunch of things. And basically that's what President Trump is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but it wasn't for the best, though. Like, we broke systems that are going to take decades to fix. And we've broken, not treaties, but we've broken, good things that we had with good people and countries that are going to take decades to earn that trust back. Right now, from my perspective and from the perspective of most liberals, I would say we are not a superpower. We are not strong, and we are the laughingstock of the world. And I'm curious to see what you would think on that, because I honestly could say to you that we are not in a strong position. And there's several things to go there that, that go on to that, but we have not done ourselves any favors.
Mm-hmm. I guess I would have to look at what metrics you'd be using.
Yeah.
Because I think that probably would matter in my response.
100%.
Economically, we're absolutely the world's superpower. You don't
Really?
think so?
No.
Who
are.
Who is the bigger superpower?
I think that the dollar is not as strong as we think it is. It's slowly losing favor because if you look at, I think it's Russia, China, there are several others in the Saudi Arabia, there's several others that are trying to make their own currency and make that backing instead of the US dollar. The US dollar, yes, is globally, the dollar is king, but we're losing that part of things. And as we've eroded things, if we were to invade Greenland, for instance, it would end NATO and it would end that dependence on making everything backed by the dollar, which means our dollar would absolutely be decimated and we are no longer the economic world power. Who do I think is? China. They have leaps and bounds beyond what we have in ways of infrastructure. In their
I saw a post that said they're putting up something like 10 new coal plants a day or a month.
Not only that,
that.
Their
it's
windmills
crazy.
and their wind and solar farms are and their high-speed trains, we are nowhere near that.
Are you familiar with Peter Zion? Peter, let me see Peter Zion. He's an author and geopolitical analyst.
I don't know if I know
He
him.
talks a little bit about the frailty of China, actually. And they're talking about population collapse issues that they're going to be facing in the next generation.
So are we.
Yeah, 100%. But they're even faster, mostly due to
and they don't.
one-child
how many
policy
billions of people do they have? But
which is a problem, though, when you have, let's say, hundreds of millions of elderly and only, 100 million young people.
It'll be interesting
We move
into things.
Maybe I'll send you, he did a really good breakdown.
I would love to read
on
it.
a podcast. And basically he was talking just geopolitically, and he's an analyst and he talks about, economics, military, land mass, population, resources. And it's a really comprehensive view into kind of China directly. And I think that, look, honestly, I think a lot of things are hyperbolic. There's always been doomsday. Like this has been in his first term. It was World War III was coming. That didn't happen. I guess I tend to be more in the middle on things a little bit.
I think our first encounter with Trump, was giving him more of the benefit of the doubt. But this time, no one is telling him no. Someone should be telling him talking about Greenland like this is bad news. This is it's most thought in my head because it's what it's the most thing. And I hope that we can have a conversation in 6 months and I'm wrong. I want to be dead wrong. I want to be Chicken Little, the sky is falling.
Yeah.
It does not feel like it this time.
I see similar, I guess, comparisons in how the right was treating the President Biden administration during COVID. That, not during COVID, but the aftermath therein, and all of the, when they talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal and they talked about all of this other stuff, and it's just, I think their response too is so hyperbolic in a lot of ways.
100%.
And generally speaking, I'm just looking back at like 20 years that I've sort of been kind of watching politics through, the Obama era and then all the way through. And it just seems like whoever's in power, the other side just thinks that this is like the end of the world. And we're still here. And I think that, I don't know, that's just my personal view. I mean, next time you come on, we'll go through all of these things because I actually have a ton of notes here about the economy and some foreign policy issues, immigration. But I feel like honestly, each of those is going to be like
they each have to be their own episode almost because it's so much, and I'm not the naysay on everything, and so looking at it and having a structure is good, and I I want to thank you for not like making this a gotcha moment.
Yeah.
Like coming in and being like, this is, like,
Right.
so what is this? And I
Yeah.
think we've had a couple of moments of like, but also like we can work through that and have a conversation instead of immediately going, well, you are the worst person in the history of the
100%.
world. And I have to thank you for that, because that doesn't happen online, and it doesn't happen
Definitely not.
often with other folks to be like, okay, this is actually... Let's talk about it. And we found a lot of common ground as well, and things that we can agree on.
So
I just think he's
speaking
the
of
worst
gotcha
person.
moments, I'm just kidding. Speaking of gotcha, no. Okay. Last thing,
Okay.
and then I'm going to read off that
Can't
AI.
wait.
That
I'm really
AI
excited about
It's actually,
this.
I think you're going to like it. Is there anything right now that the Trump administration is doing that you like?
That I like right now. See, and I've got to still filter through my filter. I've got to go through the different things.
That's a very broad, wide question. I mean, it could be
Right.
anything.
Because a lot of what we're hearing is negative, but there was something the other day, because I was thinking about this question, and I knew this would be something we'd talk about. And I was like, I think looking for waste, fraud, and abuse in a good way, there is bloat, I think would be a good policy, but it has to be done in a way that doesn't completely throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
100%. There is. And I see it at the federal level, and I see it at the state level, and I see it, everywhere with that. So I'm not surprised by that. Immigration, no. Healthcare, no. There is no plan. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. But right off this bat, there are things that can be cut. And there are things that we have programs for that don't need to be there. And things that maybe even should be given back to the federal, to the state level. Whenever we can move things to the state is better to me. Yep. Not big government. I think that's a misconception that a lot of folks on the right have about left, is we want this big overreaching government thing. And I would say that's far from the fact. I want each individual area to have more autonomy and more say and more money that they can spend.
And ultimately, they're the ones who know that area.
Correct.
Right.
We can't make change if you from this huge superficial level.
Disconnected completely from the everyday.
So if he could find a way to not put it in his pocket and give it to others, sure, give me that waste, fraud, and abuse, and make sure that it's getting back to the folks that need it the most.
Okay. You're going to like
I
this.
love this.
This is
I'm
going to be great.
excited.
And then I'll close it all out.
Perfect.
All right. So someone asked ChatGPT what it would do if it became president.
Really?
Okay. And here's the answer
Okay,
that'll
let's
shock you.
hear it.
Okay. Number one, government that actually works. Term limits for Congress.
Hell yeah.
To reduce career politicians and regulatory capture.
We can agree.
Agreed. Single issue bills only.
Thank God.
So lawmakers can't hide unpopular policies
Yes.
inside massive packages. We already touched on that.
Yep. Agreed.
Talk about kickbacks and I guess abuse. I would call that abuse.
It is.
Right?
It is
Millions of
100%.
dollars to these special interests. Public transparency dashboards for federal spending.
Love it.
Every dollar traceable in plain English.
That'd be great.
Economy and growth. This is number 2. Simplified tax code. Fewer brackets. Fewer loopholes.
Love it. Yes. Tax the rich.
Yeah. Incentives for domestic production.
Love
Not
it.
just tariffs. Rewards companies that manufacture and hire locally.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Deal. Small business first policies.
Please.
Easier access to credit. Fewer compliance traps and faster approvals.
Love it.
Yep. I think we could both agree on all of these so far.
I'm with you so far.
A hard cap on deficit growth unless formally overridden during national emergencies. So a hard cap on deficit growth.
Yeah, so you can't blow up the deficit like we're seeing in so many administrations. No, we haven't had a balanced budget since I can't even tell you.
I know. And it's
been
have you
decades.
seen that there's like this huge pushback about them not being able to pass the audit and taxpayers being like,
that should be a problem.
They'll be like, fine, then we'll see what happens in April.
That should be a big problem. I don't want to pay my taxes.
Though? Right? Isn't that a little scary? I saw that from a right winger.
Good.
So there you go.
I love it. Maybe we should all stop paying taxes. Don't pay your federal taxes, folks. No, just kidding.
This is number 3, housing and cost of living. Federal pressure on zoning reform, especially in major cities, to increase housing supply. Ban institutional bulk buying of single-family homes. This is something Trump just did.
Okay.
In starter markets. So single family homes by
Is
large
it
corporations.
through by an executive order, or was
it was
this
just, it was just, actually, let me pull it up real quick.
I'd like to know, because an executive order is not law.
True.
So I'd like to see that pass through Congress. 100% I am with you, and I will tout that to the moon when and if that happens. Because I agree. We should not be having Zillow buy all these properties and then renting them back to us.
Yes. So this was just in the news, or CNBC's talking about it here. It's just a plan at this point.
Yep.
They're putting forward to get these big corporations out of buying these
100%.
hundreds of single family homes, and then
If
jacking
he does
up the
that,
prices.
I will. That's the first thing when you ask that question again. That is the first thing I would tell.
I thought maybe that's what you were going to reference.
I thought about it.
All right.
I did. But
if it goes through, good. Right? If you can
100%.
If
If he puts that through and it becomes
by the way,
an actual
wildly
law.
popular.
Yeah.
And I think that BlackRock and some others got some huge market penalties, I guess you'd call it, reductions. All right, so that would be good.
100%. I'm with you.
Energy independence expansion to stabilize fuel and utility costs, renewables plus nuclear plus domestic drilling.
All these things can be done. We talked about that before. It can't be a one size fit all. It can't be like we're going to put all of our things.
It's a moving
Right. We can't put all of our things into gas. We got to diversify here.
Yes,
Love it.
Exactly. Healthcare reform. We're almost to the end. Healthcare reform. Practical, not ideological. Price transparency mandates. Hospitals must show real prices up front. Interesting. I'm not sure how practical that would be.
I don't think it'll be, but it's interesting.
That sounds like an ideal.
How about just
utopia.
universal health care? That'd be great. Then we don't have to worry about those prices.
Yep. But I think that the pushback would be, well, the government's going to do it, and then we know how that goes. As soon as the government starts subsidizing things, usually not the best. And we talked about student loans.
I don't know how many different countries that are developed nations can do this, but we can't.
Fair point. I guess my point back to that would be much different economies.
They're bigger. We're bigger. I get that.
We're bigger.
Too,
we're more diverse, which matters because different populations have different needs. Military spending, all of those things. We talk about Scandinavian countries and stuff that don't spend on their military because they're part of NATO and yeah. So there's obviously some nuance there, but I agree. If there's something that if we can afford it, we should do it.
100%.
And I think we could probably afford it if we could figure out how to do the budget.
Figure out if they could audit and not lose.
If we had transparency in some of these bills,
right? 100%.
There you go. Maybe that could pay for it.
We can find that money.
Focus on prevention, metabolic health, nutrition, education, and incentives for health outcomes.
Love it. Prevention is key.
Education overhaul, life skills curriculum, taxes, contracts, finance, nutrition. You should run on this.
I would.
You know what?
I'm just going to be AI Grok or whatever it is, and I'm ChatGPT, and I'm going to do this as my platform.
Yep. But I bet most of these are like 80-20, 90-10 issues.
100%.
I don't know.
I think most people are going
disagree.
to agree with a lot of this.
So trade school parity with college, equal funding and respect.
Yep.
Student loan reform, caps tied to degree ROI and income, not blank checks.
Oh, thank God.
Interesting. So that's how you don't come out of your elementary education degree with $150,000 in debt, making $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
That will pretty much bind you for decades. Technology and future proofing. This is number 6. AI and automation transition programs for displaced workers.
Love it.
Data privacy as a civil right. You own your own data.
Yes, please.
Break up tech monopolies when competition is clearly suppressed, which we clearly have that.
Mm-hmm.
Border and immigration. Order plus humanity. This is This is like the middle on everything. This is why it speaks to me, because in a lot of ways, this is kind of how I feel.
It is exactly where it should be. We've gone, again, we talked about that pendulum swing. We're one way or the other, and there's somewhere in the middle is this perfect sweet spot that we could really be working
But nobody's running on that.
No, I know. Because that doesn't swing votes. That doesn't
it's the money, I think.
Angry. No, it doesn't have the fear. It doesn't have the fear factor. It doesn't have the appeal.
It
it's
doesn't
a common
appeal to
sense.
bias and
exactly.
and fear. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so this says for number 7, border and immigration, order and humanity, secure borders plus fast legal pathways.
Yes.
Deal.
We both hate the way that the immigration system is right now.
Yeah,
we can absolutely say that.
Yep. Work visa expansion tied to labor shortages, not politics. Swift deportations for violent offenders, regardless of status.
Perfect.
We all agree on that, which is, by the way, another 80-20. That's another 80-20 issue. Okay, number 8 and the last one, culture and civil stability. Free speech protections across digital platforms.
Love it.
Good. And government corporate censorship pipelines. Agreed. De-escalation over division. Less culture war, more common ground.
100%. I don't care who you love and what you do in your home. I don't care. I just want you to be happy, healthy, and fed.
So there you go.
I love it.
Your entire
There's
platform,
my platform
for when you run.
already set.
I'll send
I'm
it to
not
you.
running for president. I don't want to run anything federal. I would like to.
Well, where does it start, though? Where does a movement like that start? I think a lot of these do sound a little bit libertarian, a little bit independent, and then a little bit of both, right and left, all kind of into one soup.
AI for president, 2028. Just kidding. Please don't do that. Corporate overlords, don't do
All right.
that.
I thought that would be interesting. I read that today, and I was
love
like,
it.
you know what?
No,
I think that
I
would be good.
honestly think that it's the best of everything that we all have wanted as a folk. And, you know, we're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to care about the 3 trans athletes that are happening. I want to care about, are my neighbors fed and are they taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
And do they have to go into massive debt to go to the doctor? So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, just some common ground stuff.
Just common ground.
Well, look, we've been here for a bit.
I'm sorry.
I cannot
I'm
thank
so
you.
sorry.
No way. I told you that these are how these go. If I told you, how long have we been here?
I think a while, like at least an hour and a half, if not more.
2.5.
Fantastic. You're going to have so much editing to do.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and talking because I think that these are the conversations that matter. I do think that it'll be fun to get into the details. Maybe next time you come on, and I'll produce an outline and give it to you ahead of time. Yeah. That way we can kind of go point counterpoint. But yeah, when you were bringing some of those issues, I was like, I didn't really want to just be casting.
I
up
know, and I was
and
like, everything at once. Bring it all.
It's okay.
But that's what it becomes, right? It becomes that's where like those comment sections fall apart. Is like everyone's in the whataboutism or this and that, and then you can't focus on the one thing, which is why we can't solve problems.
Right.
Because we're too busy blaming or pointing fingers at each other when we could be just like, hey, let's just point over here and work on it together.
Yeah, it's the complete collapse of humanity or humility.
Yeah.
You know, it's just you can't acknowledge something that is clearly wrong because it means you losing an argument.
This is not a sports game.
No,
this is not one team wins
that.
and one team loses. We all win when we can work on a problem together.
Yeah.
And we've
totally
lost that somewhere
right.
along the way.
Yeah. And I think a good takeaway would be to hold your side accountable. And also,
don't be a lemming.
Don't be afraid to look into things more deeply.
Right.
But that comes from the heart. You have to be open. You have to be open.
You have
in order
to
do
look
that.
past the headline. You have to open the actual thing. You have to look at other sources. Use that critical thinking skill.
Yep.
And talk to your neighbors. Why are we living in a vacuum when we could be talking to each other? And I learned so much today that even I was like, ooh, I have that little bias there, don't I? Ooh, that is a sticking point. Oh, that is a good question of why I can't give him any credit. You know, where can I and what is different? Mm-hmm. And I hope we're here in a couple of weeks that we can be like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely do this
maybe
again.
I'm a doomsdayer.
We'll take but we'll be able to check in real time, you know, in 6 months or something like that. And
100%.
And I would love to have you back on.
I'd love to come back.
This has been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this whole conversation.
Good.
Thank
awesome.
you.
Well, that's it. We're all done.
Thank you.
All right.
I really
see you,
did.
everybody.